Chapter 346. Xiaodong smiled and said, Dad, Mom, this is what I'm thinking. Let's let Awei earn his own living, and let him realize his shortcomings at work. Then, we'll think of a way to persuade him to go back to school. He's still too young, so it's better for him to study for a few more years. Fu Qinghai nodded repeatedly. We'll listen to you, Xia Xia. Fortunately, you're here. Otherwise, your mom and I wouldn't know what to do. Yes, Xia Xia. Mom is also very grateful to you. Xiaoling couldn't help but wipe her tears as she spoke. Xiaodong sat beside her and hugged her shoulders. She said gently, Mom, don't worry. Awei is my younger brother. I'll definitely think of a way to change his bad habits. Mom, don't be sad, okay? Xiaoling looked at her sensible daughter and was very gratified. She patted the back of her hand hard. Fu Qinghai thought for a moment and said, Xia Xia, you said that you'll arrange a job for Awei. Will this work? Xiaodong smiled. No problem, Dad. Don't worry. When they went to bed that night, Xiaodong told Beilihan about her battle with Fu Wei. In the end, she sighed. Awei is so young. I didn't expect him to become like this. It looks like it'll take a lot of effort to change him. Beilihan hugged her in his arms and said, Don't worry. I'm still here. I'll show him how powerful I am as his brother-in-law. Xiaodong's lips curled into a smile. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. You're the famous young master of the Dragon Gang. He stroked her hair and smiled. You said that you'll arrange a job for Awei. Don't tell me you want him to enter my company? Her eyes narrowed dangerously. Why? You're not willing? He chuckled softly. Of course not. I'm just worried that if he enters my company, he'll use my name to throw his weight around. Xiaodong frowned. That's right. With his personality, he would really do something like that. Beilihan reached out to rub the creases between her eyebrows and said gently, Don't worry, I have a way. I have a friend who opened a software development company. They've developed a new hotel management program, and the employees in the marketing department will get a 10% commission if they sell a set of software. As long as Awei is willing to work hard, it won't be hard for him to earn 30,000 a month. She didn't expect that he had already thought of a countermeasure while listening to her story. Xiaodong was extremely touched. She hugged him tightly and rubbed her head against his chest. Hubby, you're the best. My wife's business is also my business. Of course, your husband will go through fire and water without hesitation. Beilihan was lying flat on his back. He took the opportunity to lift her up and let her lie on top of him. Their bodies fit together without any gap. Xiaodong leaned her head against his chest and listened to his steady heartbeat. She said softly, Hubby, do you think Awei can last for 3 months? His left hand rested on her waist and his right hand stroked her back. His eyes were filled with tenderness. I don't know either. I hope he can hold on. If he can't, we'll think of a way to make him hold on. She nodded and said helplessly, Awei's matter has made me reflect on myself. I shouldn't spoil the children too much, lest I spoil them. It looks like I'll have to be stricter in the future. Beilihan chuckled softly. A loving mother and a strict father. You play the good cop and I play the bad cop. I promise I won't let them go astray. Okay. She looked up and smiled as she kissed his chin. Honey, the conversation is over. It's time for us to exercise. The corners of his lips curled up. He hugged her and turned around, pressing her under his body. He lowered his head and kissed her lips gently. She reached out her arm and hooked it around his neck as she responded passionately. He bit her lips and whispered, Honey, why are you so passionate tonight? She laughed softly. You don't like it? Then I won't be passionate. His kiss became more intense as he blocked her words with his tongue. He used his actions to tell her that he loved her passion to death. At the cafe, Xiaodong looked at the watch on her wrist. Her right hand stirred her coffee occasionally as her gaze fell on the passers-by outside the window. Half an hour had passed since the agreed time, but Fu Wei still hadn't arrived. Xiaodong didn't want to waste any more time, so she dialed his number and said mildly, Awei, where are you? I've been waiting for you for half an hour. Sorry, sis. There was a traffic jam. I'm in the car. I'll be there soon. Xiaodong's tone didn't fluctuate. How much longer? About 10 minutes. After waiting for another 10 minutes, Fu Wei still hadn't arrived. Xia Dong's heart was already burning with anger. She thought that when he arrived later, she would definitely give him a good scolding. After another 5 minutes, Fu Wei ran in, sweating profusely. He sat down opposite her and said while panting, "Sorry sis. I'm late." Xia Dong had already prepared some words to scold him, but seeing him in such a sorry state, he swallowed them back down. Instead, he pulled out a few napkins and handed them to him. "Wipe yourself." "Thank you, sis." Fu Wei took the napkins and wiped his face a few times. He grinned at her. "Sis, I've already talked to the people at the casino. They'll give me 3 months. Xia Dong was still worried and asked, "Did they make things difficult for you? What were the terms that you agreed on?" Fu Wei raised his chin proudly. "No. According to what we discussed yesterday, I'll give them an extra 10,000 yuan, and they'll give me another 3 months. Are there really no other terms?" "There's really nothing else." Xia Dong was relieved after Fu Wei repeatedly assured her. She took out a business card from her handbag and pushed it in front of him. "This is a software development company. Your brother-in-law has already talked to the manager of the sales department. You can go to work tomorrow, but you have to remember not to expose your relationship with your brother-in-law. More importantly, you can't use your brother-in-law's name to do bad things. Do you understand?" "Understood." Fu Wei took the business card. On it was written High and High Technology Company Limited, Sales Manager Deng Yuexiang. Xia Dong said, "You'll report directly to the sales manager tomorrow. Do you have any formal clothes?" Fu Wei was wearing a flowery shirt and ripped jeans. He had a head of yellow hair that looked like a chicken's nest, and a few earrings in his ears. He looked like a delinquent at first glance. He scratched his head. "No." Xia Dong took out a bill from her wallet and placed it on the table. "Let's go. I'll take you to buy clothes." Fu Wei's smile reached his ears. He grinned and said, "Okay. Thank you, sis." Xia Dong took him to the department store. His face fell and he muttered unhappily, "Buy clothes here? I thought we were going to a high-end clothing store." Xia Dong rolled her eyes at him. "Don't forget that you're just an ordinary employee. Is it appropriate for you to wear an expensive suit to the office?" Okay. You're right. Who asked you to be the one paying?" Xia Dong couldn't be bothered with him. She asked the waiter to bring a few suits of better quality and stuffed them into his arms. "Go in and try them on." "Okay." Fu Wei dragged his voice lazily and carried the clothes into the fitting room. Clothes make the man. Fu Wei, who looked like a ruffian, walked out in a suit. He was 1.7 meters tall and looked handsome in the suit. Of course, one had to ignore his messy yellow hair. "Not bad. I'll take these 3. Xia Dong chose 3 suits and 3 shirts. She asked the waiter to pack them up. After swiping her card, she took him to the leather shoe store next door and bought 2 pairs of leather shoes for him. Then she bought a tie, a belt, and a briefcase. There were a few bags of them. Xia Dong walked in front energetically. Fu Wei followed behind her with the big and small bags. Sis, slow down. I can't keep up." Xia Dong turned around and threw him a disdainful look. "You can't even twist this little thing? You call yourself a man? How embarrassing." Fu Wei said unhappily, "These things are quite heavy. Try twisting them if you don't believe me." Xia Dong glanced at him and said indifferently, "The strawberries that Dad and Mom packed were much heavier than these things. Have you ever heard them say heavy in the past 10 years? Fu Wei opened his mouth. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. A faint pink color appeared on his handsome face. Xia Dong stopped before going too far. She turned around and said, "Hurry up and keep up. We still have a lot of things to do." Fu Wei was stunned. He quickly chased after her. "I'm coming, sis. Wait for me." The 2 of them walked out of the department store one after the other and brushed past Xia Zhenqing. Xia Dong looked straight ahead and didn't notice Xia Zhenqing. Xia Zhenqing did notice them, but he was too embarrassed to call out to Xia Dong. At the same time, he was puzzled. Why did the young man behind her call her sis? Xia Dong stopped the BMW outside a hair salon. She looked sideways at Fu Wei. "Get out of the car." Fu Wei followed Xia Dong into the hair salon. An attendant immediately came up to them. "How may I help you?" Xiaodong looked at Fu Wei and said, "Miss, please design a hairstyle for him and dye his hair black." Fu Wei said anxiously, "Wait sis. I don't want to dye it black." Xiaodong raised her hand and knocked on his head. "You look like a delinquent now. You have to change your image." "But no buts." Xiaodong threatened him with her eyes. He finally shut up and pouted. The attendant smiled. "Do you have a familiar hairstylist?" Xiaodong said no. "Arrange for your head hairstylist." "Okay, this way please." Xiaodong sat in the waiting room, flipping through the magazine in her hand. 2 hours later, Fu Wei's hairstyle was finally done. When he appeared in front of her, she almost couldn't believe her eyes. Ad Shin was $7.99. Chapter 347. Fu Wei was now wearing a white shirt and black trousers. His refreshing black hair was suffused with a rich luster, and his irregularly cut bangs were slanted to one side. It was very well groomed, making his handsome face look even more delicate and handsome, and also very capable and experienced. Xiaodong smiled with satisfaction. She walked in front of him and reached out her hand to his ear. He quickly covered his ear. "Sis, my dear sister, I'm only left with this personality thing. Leave it for me. Don't even think about it." Xiaodong pried his fingers away, took off the earring on his ear, and threw it into the trash can. Fu Wei looked sad and stared at the trash can. "All right, look at you." Xiaodong pushed his shoulder. "Look at yourself in the mirror." Fu Wei turned around and looked at himself in the mirror. He was in a suit and had a handsome hairstyle. However, the expression on his face and his body movements were too ugly. He looked like a hooligan who wore the wrong clothes. "Raise your head, chest, stomach, and butt." Xiaodong used a magazine to pat the corresponding parts of his body. She said in a serious voice, "Put away that wretched expression of yours. From today onwards, you're a white-collar worker." White collar? This word was very distant and unfamiliar to Fu Wei. He didn't know why, but when he looked at himself in the mirror, he suddenly had a strange feeling. He subconsciously followed Xiaodong's action of patting him with the magazine and raised his head. He gradually restrained the expression on his face and imitated the white-collar workers on the street. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing a trace of a smile. The image in the mirror immediately changed. Although his face still had a childish look, he was handsome, tall, and cultured. "Very good." Xiaodong didn't hide her admiration for him and patted his shoulder. "That's how it should be. Ah Wei, congratulations on taking the first step. Remember, a person's image is very important because the first impression others have of you starts from your clothes and appearance. Clothes not only leave a sense of beauty, but also reflect your personal temperament, character, and inner world. Appropriate speech and generous behavior are the second step. Come, I'll take you to a place." Fu Wei had a magical feeling as if he had stepped into another world. This was the first time he felt that when he put on clothes, his words and actions would involuntarily lean towards that kind of image. Xiaodong brought him to an etiquette training center. The instructor was called Belinda. When Xiaodong was the editor-in-chief of Glamour magazine, she had done an exclusive interview with Belinda, so the two of them had a private relationship. Belinda was a tall and charming lady with a head of beautiful brown curly hair. She enthusiastically stretched out her arms and hugged Xiaodong, exclaiming happily, "Wow, Xiaodong, what brings you here?" Xiaodong smiled. "Belinda, your career is getting better and better. Congratulations." Belinda shrugged and teased. "How can they compare to you? Your husband is handsome and rich, and your children are cute and obedient. You're the envy of all women." "You're just teasing me." Xiaodong hurriedly pulled Fu Wei over and said, "Belinda, this is my brother, Fu Wei. He just stepped into society. Please teach him some basic etiquette." "Sure, no problem. You know that my classes last a week. Does your brother have time?" "Yes." Xiaodong turned to Fu Wei. "Wei, talk to Belinda first." Belinda stretched out her right hand and smiled. "Hello, Fu Wei. I'm the etiquette teacher, Belinda." Fu Wei awkwardly stretched out his right hand and shook hers. He murmured, "Hello, teacher." Belinda's smile widened and she said affectionately, "Just call me Belinda. I'll call you Wei." Fu Wei's fair face was tinged with a blush. Belinda's etiquette class started at 7 p.m. every day and lasted for an hour and a half for 7 days. Xiaodong repeatedly reminded Fu Wei to go to Belinda's studio for training starting tomorrow after work. After coming out of the studio, the fearless Fu Wei doubted himself for the first time. He leaned against the passenger seat dejectedly. Xiaodong glanced at him. "What's wrong?" Fu Wei mumbled. "I don't know if I can do it well." Xiaodong knocked on his head. "Cheer up. You haven't even started working hard and you're already discouraged? Think about the 100,000 yuan you owe. Do you want them to chop off your hands?" Fu Wei quivered. "Of course not. That's good. Report to the company tomorrow and work hard." Fu Wei pursed his lips. "Got it." Xiaodong looked at her watch. It was actually dinner time. She glanced at the street outside the window and said, "What do you like to eat? Let's eat together." Fu Wei chuckled. "Century brocade." Xiaodong rolled her eyes. "You haven't even started earning money and you're already so extravagant. Western food stingy." Xiaodong thought for a while and asked, "Wei, do you think your brother-in-law is rich?" At the mention of this, Fu Wei immediately perked up. His eyes shone with a green light. "Of course he's rich. Isn't he number 1 on the rich list of City A? Sis, can I go directly to brother-in-law's company?" Xiaodong said earnestly. "Wei, do you know how your brother-in-law got his achievements and status today?" Fu Wei pursed his lips. "It's because of his father. Tell me, why don't I have a rich father?" Xiaodong's mouth twitched. She had the urge to throw this kid out of the car window. She coughed and said, "When your brother-in-law founded Shenghao Group, he didn't rely on his family. He relied on his own abilities." Fu Wei's eyes widened. "You're lying. I don't believe you." "You don't believe me? Then I'll tell you." Xiaodong started to talk about how Bailey Han started to learn martial arts when he was 4 years old. She talked about how he was a good student since he was a child. His family was strict. In order to improve himself, he never played games like other children. When she talked about how Bailey Han was thrown on an isolated island at the age of 16 to train for his coming-of-age ceremony, the car arrived at a Western restaurant. She stopped the car and said, "We're here. Get out of the car. I'll tell you when we eat." In the restaurant, Xiaodong continued the topic from before and said, "When your brother-in-law was 20 years old, he had already obtained a doctorate from Harvard Business School. After returning to China, he refused to inherit his family's company. He pulled in investors himself and founded Shenghao Group." Fu Wei listened with great interest. From time to time, he would show a surprised expression. Finally, he sighed and concluded, "Although brother-in-law didn't rely on his family to achieve what he has today, his family created a good environment for him. This is also inseparable from his success. In the end, it's better to be born in a rich family." After saying that, he added enviously, "If only I was born in a rich family." Xiaodong had the urge to smash the bowl. She clenched her hands tightly and suppressed the impulse. She said in a deep voice, "Wei, although your living environment is not as good as your brother-in-law's, your parents have never mistreated you in terms of living and education. It's you who didn't learn well. Even dropping out of school was your own idea. Why don't you know how to reflect on yourself?" Fu Wei wanted to refute, but Xiaodong beat him to it. She said, "The reason why your brother-in-law is successful is that he is good at learning and improving his ability. There's a saying that knowledge can change one's fate. Don't tell me that you haven't heard of it." Fu Wei's lips moved. He snorted and said angrily, "Sis, don't preach to me. It's useless to say so much to me." Xiaodong gritted her teeth and struggled. Finally, she glared at him and pushed her plate in front of him. "You eat it all. I've lost my appetite because of you. Okay." Fu Wei didn't feel guilty at all. He smiled and moved the steak from her plate to his. Xiaodong looked at his greasy mouth and couldn't help but shake her head. After dinner, he received a call. It was as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He waved at Xiaodong and said, "Sis, I'm leaving. I have something to do." Xiaodong grabbed his collar. "Where are you going?" Although he deliberately lowered his voice when he answered the call, she still heard him say, "Wait for me. I'll be right there." Fu Wei's face was bitter. Sis, my friend asked me out to play. Let go of me. No. From today onwards, you have to cut ties with those bad friends of yours. If you hang around with them, you'll never be able to walk the right path. Xia Dong snatched the phone from his hand without giving him a chance to explain. He searched through the call log for the number he had just received and dialed it. Sis, give me back my phone. Fu Wei rushed over to snatch the phone. Xia Dong quickly dodged and nimbly avoided him. Hey Wei, didn't I say we were at the rave bar? Why are you calling again? It was extremely noisy on the other end of the line. Xia Dong said coldly. Wei won't be going over. If you have any problems in the future, don't look for him. Hey, who are you? You're so arrogant. I'm his guardian. Don't harass him in the future. After Xia Dong said this, she didn't wait for the other party to reply. She hung up the phone and turned it off. She took out the SIM card from the phone and casually put it in her handbag. Her actions were done smoothly. Fu Wei was stunned for a second before he reacted. He shouted angrily, Xia Dong, who allowed you to do this? Hurry up and give me back my phone and SIM card. Xia Dong suddenly turned her head and stared at him with a sharp gaze. She exuded a cold aura. Under her fierce gaze, Fu Wei actually felt uneasy. He pursed his lips and deliberately raised his chin. He said in a rough voice, What are you looking at? Hurry up and give me back my things. Xia Dong's fingers were trembling. She really wanted to teach this useless bastard of a lesson. However, looking at his childish face, she held back. She approached him step by step. A strong pressure pressed down on him. His legs retreated without leaving a trace. She suddenly grabbed his arm and dragged him out of the Western restaurant under everyone's surprised and curious gazes. She placed him harshly into the BMW. Attention, Xinwu 799. Chapter 348. Xia Dong pursed her lips and started the car expressionlessly. Fu Wei looked at her ashen face and swallowed his saliva. His dark eyes turned slightly and a big smile appeared on his face. He laughed and said, Sister, where are we going now? Xia Dong looked straight ahead and ignored his flattery. She said coldly, Where do you live? Do you want to take me home? No need, sis. I can go back by myself. I've already troubled you enough today. Fu Wei said as he peeked at her expression. Xia Dong pursed her lips and said coldly, Tell me the address. Okay. Fu Wei reluctantly said the name of a place. As Xia Dong drove, she called Bailey Han and told him that she had something to do and would be back later. Bailey Han was on the way back to the old mansion. Knowing that she was with Fu Wei, he asked, Where are you? I'll come over and find you. No need. I'll send Wei home and be back soon. Okay then. Be careful on the road. Okay, got it. Xia Dong ended the call. Fu Wei smiled slyly. Sis, it's brother-in-law, right? Brother-in-law is so good to you. She glanced at him and smiled. Her tone softened. Wei, from tomorrow onwards, work hard. Mom and Dad are old. Don't make them worry, okay? Fu Wei was slightly startled. He turned his head away as if he was avoiding something. He looked out of the window at the hurried pedestrians on the street and remained silent. The smile on Xia Dong's face faded. She didn't say anything and drove to the destination in silence. This was an old city district. The streets were narrow, and the houses were low and old. There were many food stalls on the roadside. Many young men with tattoos on their bodies were sitting at the stalls on the roadside, drinking and playing finger-guessing games with their companions. Their shouts and curses were intertwined together. The BMW stopped by the roadside and attracted the attention of many delinquents with dyed hair. Xia Dong didn't seem to notice their strange looks. She calmly got out of the car and locked it. She said to Fu Wei, Let's go. Lead the way. Those things. Fu Wei glanced at the trunk. Xia Dong said indifferently, No hurry. Fu Wei didn't understand what she was up to. He scratched his head and led her into a dark alley. He walked in front and reminded her, Sis, be careful. The road here isn't easy to walk on. Xia Dong nodded and followed him forward. They stopped in front of a small 3-story building. The building was very old and looked quite old. The two of them climbed up to the 3rd floor. Fu Wei took out the key and opened the door. After he went in, he blocked Xia Dong at the door and chuckled. Sister, the room is very messy. Why don't you not come in? Xia Dong's ears were sharp. She could already hear the sounds of a man and a woman coming from inside. Her face instantly turned ugly. She lowered her voice and asked, "What's going on?" Fu Wei scratched his head awkwardly. It's my friend and his girlfriend. They have nowhere to go, so they're at my place." Xia Dong was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She couldn't imagine what he was thinking about when he was at the age where he was curious about women. Her face was cold. She poked his forehead with her finger and gritted her teeth. "Did you play with women?" No, I really didn't." Fu Wei hurriedly shook his head. Afraid that she wouldn't believe him, he even raised his hand and swore. "I swear I really didn't." Xia Dong's face looked better. She pulled him over and pushed him out of the door. She held the door with her right hand and deliberately slammed the door with a loud bang. Fu Wei hurriedly pulled her back. Sis, what are you doing?" Xia Dong said indifferently. "To remind them that someone is coming." She lifted her chin. "You turn around." He looked pitiful. "Why don't we wait a little longer?" Xia Dong glared at him and said sternly, "Turn around." He hurriedly turned around and heard her footsteps as she walked into the room. It was a standalone bedroom with a bathroom. It was less than 10 square meters. Clothes and pants were strewn all over the floor. The shabby sofa was filled with junk. Most importantly, there were 2 people lying on the double bed, a man and a woman. Both of them were wrapped in blankets. They poked their heads out and stared at Xia Dong. Obviously, they had heard the conversation between Xia Dong and her brother at the door. The man said uncomfortably, "Sis, don't be angry. We'll leave immediately." Xia Dong said indifferently, "You don't have to leave. Wrap yourself in blankets and don't come out. Away, come in." Fu Wei hurriedly ran in and stood behind Xia Dong. He winked at the couple on the bed with a gloomy face. Xia Dong said expressionlessly, "Away, pack up your valuables and come with me." Fu Wei, who was making eye contact with his buddy on the bed, was stunned when he heard this. Where are we going with you?" "Moving." Xia Dong said indifferently. She raised her hand and looked at her watch. "I'll give you 5 minutes. Hurry up. I'll wait for you at the door." "I'm not moving." Although his little house was not in good condition, it was in a good location. There were places to eat, drink, and play when he went out. "Stop talking nonsense. You don't have the right to say no." Xia Dong stared at him coldly. "You still have 4.5 minutes. Fu Wei was scolded by her in front of his friends. He felt embarrassed and said unhappily, "I don't want you to care. I'm not moving." Xia Dong nodded. "Okay, then you can stay here. You don't have to go to work tomorrow. Let the people at the casino chop off your hands." After she finished speaking, she walked out without looking at him. Fu Wei hurriedly grabbed her arm and squeezed out a smile. Sis, don't be rash. I'm just joking. Wait for me. I'll be out soon." Xia Dong replied indifferently with an and walked out of the door without looking back. As soon as she left, Fu Wei's face fell. He looked as if the sky had fallen. The buddy who was nestled under the blanket said in a low voice, "Away, your sister is so fierce. She's like a tigress." Fu Wei put a finger to his lips and shushed him. He lowered his voice and said, "Stop making a fuss. You're F*king killing me. You didn't even tell me you were coming." Xia Dong's calm voice drifted from outside the door. "For minutes. Hey, I'll be done soon." Fu Wei threw the buddy on the bed and rushed to the wardrobe. He dug out a handbag and stuffed his clothes into it. He then rushed to the toilet and stuffed all his toiletries into the bag. Before he left, he waved at the couple on the bed. He put his right hand to his ear and gestured for them to call again. Xia Dong drove him to a good hotel near her apartment and paid for a room for 10 days in advance. Xia Dong opened the trunk and helped him carry the shopping bags into the room. She reminded him, "Stay here for a few days. You can move in with Mom and Dad after my apartment is renovated." Fu Wei nodded. "Okay, got it." Xia Dong took out more than 10 bills from her wallet and handed them to him. "This money is enough for you to use for 10 days. Don't spend it recklessly." He took the money with a smile. Thank you, sis. I'm leaving. Rest early. Don't be late for tomorrow's report. I know. I won't be late. He waved at her cheerfully. Take care, sis. Be careful on the road. After Xiaodong went downstairs, she was not in a hurry to leave. She sat in the car and waited for more than 10 minutes. From afar, she saw the lights in Fu Wei's room go out. 2 minutes later, he walked out of the hotel casually, wearing a pair of ripped jeans and a black skull-shaped t-shirt. He put his hands in his trouser pockets. She sneered. She knew that he would not be so honest. Fu Wei was happy that he had finally gotten rid of his nagging tigress sister. He whistled and swaggered down the street, planning to meet up with his friends at the bar. Oh right, he had to get a new SIM card. He touched the phone in his trouser pocket that did not have a SIM card. The corners of his lips curled up triumphantly. Suddenly his vision blurred. A familiar figure stood in front of him, exuding a cold aura. He blinked and waved with a smile. Hey sis. Why aren't you home yet? Xiaodong crossed her arms and sneered. If I'm home, how would I know that you're just brushing me off? He scratched his head and chuckled. Sis, don't misunderstand. I just went out to buy a pack of cigarettes. Buy cigarettes? Do you need to dress like this to buy cigarettes? Xiaodong unceremoniously pulled off the earring on his ear and said coldly, Now immediately, get back to your room. Sis, I really want to buy cigarettes. Go back. Fu Wei, don't make me repeat myself. Xiaodong's sharp eyes stared at him with a chilling gaze. Okay. Fu Wei hung his head and slowly went upstairs. Xiaodong watched his back disappear at the top of the stairs before returning to the car. Bailey Han called. Honey, why aren't you back yet? Didn't things go well? Xiaodong put one hand on her forehead and said helplessly, Oh wait, it's really. She explained the situation briefly. I'm worried that he'll go out and fool around again after I left. Bailey Han paused and said, The Dragon Gang has a branch nearby. I'll send someone to watch Ao Wei. Okay. Thank you, hubby. Bailey Han said gently. Don't worry. Come back quickly and drive carefully. Okay, got it. She smiled and her gloomy mood was swept away. Just as Xiaodong had expected. Half an hour after she left, Fu Wei couldn't hold back his restless heart and rushed downstairs. However, before he could step out of the hotel, a cold-faced man in a black suit stopped him and said coldly, Young Master Fu, please go back. Who are you? Why are you stopping me? The man said coldly, I was sent by young madam to watch you. Young Master Fu, you can go back to your room. F***CK, what is this? Fu Wei grabbed his hair in frustration and went upstairs helplessly. It seemed that his plan to have fun tonight was ruined. Ad. Hongcha 866. Chapter 349. The sales manager, Deng Yuexiang, knew that Fu Wei was Bailey Han's brother-in-law, but Bailey Han had already told him not to give Fu Wei any special treatment. He was to be treated as a newcomer in the sales department, and to be trained as he should be. Therefore, when Fu Wei was late on his first day of work, Deng Yuexiang criticized him without hesitation, and then told him what his job was, and then arranged a week of training for him. A week later, Fu Wei, who knew nothing about software and sales, finally grasped some knowledge, and was barely able to start work. Deng Yuexiang threw him a brochure of all the hotels in a city, and said, These are your target customers. Your task is to persuade them to buy our company's hotel management software. For every software sold, you can get a 10% commission. Fu Wei calculated silently in his heart. A software package costs more than 50,000 yuan, and a 10% commission would be more than 5,000 yuan. Every month, as long as he sold 8 software packages, he could easily save enough money to pay off his gambling debts. If he sold a few more software packages every month, he could live a well-off life. Perhaps because of his sales prowess, he could even be promoted, get a raise, become a general manager, become a CEO, marry a beautiful woman, and climb to the pinnacle of life. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Fu Wei's blood was boiling. He hugged the thick stack of documents and began to daydream. However, after only 3 days he was discouraged and had the idea of retreating. Today the family moved. His parents moved from Xiaoshui village to Xiaodong's apartment. After Fu Wei got off work, He also moved from the hotel to the apartment under the surveillance of the bodyguards. Bailey Han ordered a table of dishes in the hotel, especially to celebrate their housewarming. The whole family was very excited, except for Fu Wei, who was not in high spirits, and hung his head gloomily. This was the first official meeting between Bailey Han and Fu Wei. He glanced at Fu Wei, who was drowning his sorrows in alcohol, without batting an eyelid. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. "Ah Wei, you've been working for 10 days. Fu Wei looked up as if he had been injected with chicken blood, and said excitedly, "Brother-in-law, I don't think sales is suitable for me. Can you arrange a job for me? I want something easy and with a high salary." Xiaodong pretended not to hear anything and lowered her head to remove the fish bones for Xiao Guai. She knew that Bailey Han must have a way to subdue Ah Wei. When Fu Chenghai and Xiaoling heard this, their faces turned red. Fu Chenghai scolded, "Ah Wei, don't talk nonsense. You're doing a good job now. Why change jobs?" Bailey Han's expression didn't change. He had a gentle smile on his face. "Dad, don't worry. Let's hear what Ah Wei has to say first. Ah Wei, why do you think that sales isn't suitable for you?" "It's still my brother-in-law who understands me." Fu Wei first praised Bailey Han, then said, "Brother-in-law, I don't know anything about software. When I was introducing it to the client, I was stumped by a few questions. Also, the people in charge of those hotels don't care about the sales staff at all. I went to a few hotels and was chased out." Bailey Han smiled faintly. "Have you ever thought about where the problem lies?" Fu Wei said nonchalantly, "Those people are snobs. They look down on the sales staff. Also, those software are too hard to sell." Bailey Han's lips curled up slightly. His tone was calm, but his eyes were stern. "The people who are looked down on are not the sales staff, but those who have no confidence and no ability. If you think that software is hard to sell, then do you know how many sets of software the ace of your sales department can sell every month? How many sets?" Fu Wei's eyes were stubborn. He was obviously not convinced. Bailey Han stared into his eyes and said meaningfully, "On average, 2 sets a day. His monthly sales commission is a few $100,000. His name is Deng Yuexiang." "Manager Deng." Fu Wei couldn't believe it. "He's already a manager. Does he still need to go out and sell products?" Bailey Han smiled. "Indeed, he doesn't need to. Your boss originally wanted to promote him to the position of deputy general manager, but he declined and insisted on staying in the sales department because he felt that the sales department was the best place to show off his skills. The sales staff are like the vanguard. Without them, the company's products can't be sold. Who will create profits for the company? Do you still think that the sales staff is not important?" His words were neither hurried nor slow. There was no hint of criticism in his tone, but it gently hit Fu Wei's heart. He quietly clenched his fingers. He didn't dare to look at Bailey Han's wise and deep eyes. Xiaoyi suddenly interrupted. "Little uncle, the richest man in Hong Kong also made his fortune in sales." Xiaobao added. "And the richest man in Las Vegas, Adelson. He started delivering newspapers when he was 12 years old." Xiao Guai blinked her beautiful big eyes and said in a childish voice, "Little uncle, you will also become the richest man." Xiao Guai's innocent and childish words made everyone laugh. Xiao Guai pouted. "Don't laugh. I'm serious. Little uncle, you have to work hard. When you make money, you have to buy me candy." Everyone laughed even louder. Fu Wei, who was sitting beside her, was also amused by her cute appearance. He reached out to stroke her soft hair and said with a smile, "Okay, I will definitely work hard so that I can earn money to buy sweets for little Guai." After finishing the meal, Fu Wei temporarily dismissed the idea of retreating. When they went downstairs, Xia Dong was holding Xiaoling's arm. The mother and daughter chatted and laughed intimately. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao followed behind them. Bailey Han held Xiao Guai's hand and walked at the back with Fu Qinghai and his son. The family walked out of the hotel, talking and laughing. Bailey Han let go of Xiao Guai's little hand and said with a smile, "Dad, Mom, wait here for a moment. I'll go get the car." "Okay, Han. Slow down. There's no hurry." Xiaoling smiled kindly. Bailey Han acknowledged, and walked with steady steps to the parking lot. It was already past 8 o'clock in the evening, and the streets were brightly lit. They happened to be standing at the entrance of the hotel, and the bright lights poured down on them. Xia Zhenxing, who was walking slowly toward the hotel, saw them at a glance and recognized Xia Dong and the children. Xia Dong and the others were chatting and didn't notice Xia Zhenxing. Xia Zhenxing was only 5 or 6 meters away from them. He hesitated for a moment, but still walked towards the entrance of the hotel. Xiao Guai was the first to notice Xia Zhenxing. She ran to Xia Dong's side and tugged at her clothes. "Mommy, look. It's Grandpa." Everyone raised their heads and looked in the direction Xiao Guai was pointing. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy. Xia Dong held onto Xia Ling's arm and could clearly feel her mother's body tremble. Fu Qinghai's expression also turned ugly. Even Fu Wei, who had always been mischievous, sensed that something was wrong and wiped the sloppy smile off his face. Xia Zhenxing noticed that everyone was staring at him and felt a little awkward. He braced himself and walked over to Xia Dong and the others. He smiled and said, Xia, you're having dinner here. Who are these people?" His gaze swept over Xia Ling, Fu Qinghai, and the others before finally landing on Fu Wei. He still remembered this young man. He was the one who had called Xia Dong sis at the mall. Xia Ling held Xia Dong's hand tightly. She secretly patted the back of her mother's hand to comfort her. She looked at Xia Zhenxing and said calmly, "They are my friends. It has nothing to do with you." Xia Zhenxing felt a little awkward and forced a smile. "I'm here for a class reunion. I'll be upstairs. I'll be leaving first." Xia Dong nodded calmly. He glanced at Xia Ling and Fu Qinghai again. Strange, their expressions were very stiff, especially that old woman. The way she looked at him made his hair stand on end. Xia Zhenxing's heart was filled with doubts as he walked towards the hotel. Fu Wei watched Xia Zhenxing walk away and snorted disdainfully. "Sis, is that your father?" Xia Ling glared at him. "Keep your voice down. What are you afraid of? Are you afraid that he'll recognize you?" Fu Wei shrugged indifferently. "You're all old now. How could he recognize you so easily?" Even so, Xia Ling still had lingering fears. She sighed. If possible, she really didn't want to see that man again for the rest of her life. Xia Dong comforted her in a low voice. Just then, Bailey Han drove the car over. The family pretended that nothing had happened and got into the car to go home. As for Xia Zhenxing, he sat in the middle of a group of old classmates and listened to everyone flattering and teasing each other. He was still puzzled. That old woman Xia Dong was holding on to. That old woman and the man behind them seemed familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen them before. The former class monitor was now the boss of a private enterprise. Seeing that Xia Zhenxing was silent, he patted him on the shoulder and smiled. "Zhenxing, we're old classmates. We haven't seen each other for decades. Why are you just sitting there without saying anything?" Someone teased. "Zhenxing, don't tell me you're thinking about your wife." Everyone burst into laughter. Xia Zhenxing smiled awkwardly. "Don't talk nonsense." "We're not talking nonsense. Your wife is a famous person in a city. She's the Iron Lady of the business world. Not only is she capable, she's also beautiful. You're really lucky to be able to marry her." Xia Zhenxing pursed his lips and didn't reply. The class monitor gossiped. "I'm curious. What does Su Morong see in you? She clearly knows that you have a wife, but she's still following you wholeheartedly. Speaking of which, you even let Xia Ling down back then." Xia Zhenxing's expression became uglier and uglier. His hands clenched into fists. The class monitor sitting beside him was the first to notice his abnormality. He quickly said, "Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's go sing." The others knew that they had stirred up trouble and quickly agreed. "Okay," Xia Zhenxing stood up and said in a low voice. "You guys go ahead. I still have something to do. I'll go back first." "Zhenxing, we haven't gathered for a long time. Let's go together, okay? You sang well back then and charmed many female classmates. I wonder how your voice is now. Let us see." Add Xinwu 799. Chapter 350. Immediately, a female classmate expressed, "That's right, Zhenxing. We girls like to hear you sing. Let's go together. Don't disappoint us." Xia Zhenxing ignored everyone's urging and shook his head. "I really can't. My wife ordered me to be home before 10 p.m. every night. Next time it's my treat. All right, let's not stop him. It's our fault for causing a conflict between husband and wife. Jinxing, you have to remember what you said just now. Next time you'll be the host. The class monitor patted his shoulder. Xia Jinxing smiled. Okay, I'll remember. You guys have fun. He waved his hand and walked out of the private room. He closed the door but didn't rush to leave. Instead, he let out a long sigh. In the private room, the class monitor complained to the classmate with the big mouth. Big head, look at you. Of all things to bring up, you had to bring up Xiaoling. He must be feeling bad right now. I didn't do it on purpose. Xia Jinxing left the hotel and drove home. His mind was filled with Big Head's words. You let Xiaoling down. This sentence was like a curse, lingering in his mind and driving him crazy. When he got home, the whole villa was dark except for the lights in the living room. He leaned on the sofa dejectedly and called the servant. Madam isn't back yet? The servant replied. Madam went to a villa in the suburbs for a few days and hasn't been home recently. Before she left, she asked you to take good care of Mississippi. Su Xingchen was still in the hospital and his temper was getting weirder. Other than Su Morong, he didn't have a good attitude towards anyone. Xia Jinxing had a headache just thinking about his daughter. He waved his hand tiredly and signaled the servant to leave. In the empty room, there wasn't a trace of life. It was terrifyingly cold. He took a bottle of whiskey from the wine rack, took a wine glass and twisted it into the bedroom. It wasn't his and Su Morong's bedroom. It was his private room. They had been separated for a long time. Ever since Su Xingchen found out that he had hidden the photos of Xiaoling and her mother in a compartment of his desk 6 years ago, he no longer dared to place the photos in his study. Instead, he hid them in his bedroom. From the closet, he found the photo that he had treasured for many years and held it tightly to his chest. He poured a full glass of wine and drank it in one gulp. The bitter and spicy taste stimulated his taste buds and his nasal cavity. Tears welled up in his eyes. The wife and daughter in the photo were smiling peacefully. At that time, they were so happy. If Su Morong had not appeared, they would have continued to be happy. Xia Jinxing burst into laughter as tears rolled down his cheeks. He pounded his chest with his left hand and repeatedly said, I'm sorry. He would never forget the fire 20 years ago. That fire had not only burned Xiaoling to death, it had also destroyed his entire heart. I don't know how many glasses of wine. Xia Jinxing is completely drunk. He holds the photo and cries loudly. For decades, he has been suppressing his feelings. Now he finally vents them out and can't stop. He was so drunk that the next morning he missed his alarm and his morning classes. He slept until noon and woke up with a splitting headache from the hangover. The bed was a mess and there were vomit marks on the floor. The air was filled with the stench of alcohol and filth. He almost couldn't help but vomit again. He quickly opened the window to let in some fresh air. Before calling the servants to clean up the room, Xia Jinxing found the photos of Xiaoling and her mother on the bed. He planned to hide the photos, but he reluctantly looked at their faces and then put the photos in the bottom drawer of the cabinet. Just as he stood up and was about to ask the servants to clean up the room, a pair of eyes suddenly flashed in his mind. It was a pair of eyes filled with hatred. It was the gaze she had given him when he had divorced Xiaoling. Xiaoling had knelt in front of him and begged him, but he had left without hesitation. Her eyes, which were filled with resentment, gradually overlapped with the eyes of the old woman she saw last night. His body suddenly froze. His face was pale and his heart was thumping. He looked like he was in a daze. He muttered to himself, "No, that's impossible. She was clearly burned to death. No, her body was not found in the fire. If it wasn't her, why was Xia so close to her? Who is that man? He looks so familiar. I must have seen him somewhere. What's going on? What's going on? Is she really not dead?" Xia Jinxing was almost driven crazy by the thoughts in his mind. He hit his head with both hands and squatted on the floor. One moment he laughed, the next he cried. The servants who came upstairs to clean were shocked to see him like this. They quickly ran up to help him. "Sir, what's wrong? Are you okay? Tell me, is she dead or not?" Xia Jinxing suddenly grabbed the servant's arm. His eyes were emitting a fierce light. His expression was fierce and scary. "Sir, wake up." The servant was so scared that her face was pale. She screamed, someone come quickly. Sir has gone crazy." Xia Zhenqing was stimulated by her screams. His mind gradually cleared up. He pushed her away and ran into the bathroom. He closed the door tightly and splashed his face and head with cold water. Sir, are you okay?" The butler heard the commotion and rushed over. He knocked on the bathroom door. Xia Zhenqing looked at himself in the mirror. He took a deep breath and said, "I'm fine." The butler and servants were relieved. Xia Zhenqing finished washing up and wiped his face. He came out of the bathroom and said in a low voice, "I just had a nightmare. Nothing happened." Okay, we understand." The others nodded quickly. He nodded in satisfaction. "Clean up the room." He did not know that after he left and went to the study room, the maid quietly reported his madness to Su Murong, who was in the villa in the suburbs. At this time, Su Murong, wearing a sexy swimsuit, was lying on a white recliner, comfortably basking in the sun. In the swimming pool, a young and robust man was leisurely swimming with his upper body naked. Su Murong lazily said, "What did he say?" The maid whispered, "I only heard one sentence. He asked me, 'Tell me, is she dead or not?'" Su Murong's eyes slightly tightened. She lightly said, "The she in his words, who is he referring to?" "Sir did not say. By the way, madam, Sir warned us that he only had a nightmare." "Okay, I know. If there's anything else, report it to me." Su Murong cut off the call. Her distant gaze looked over the tall trees by the swimming pool to the horizon. Is she dead or not? Who was she referring to? The handsome man in the swimming pool stood up from the water. Water droplets slid down his muscular chest. His sexy Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Needless to say, it was very seductive. He draped a bath towel over his shoulders and slowly walked towards Su Murong. He bent over and kissed her on the cheek. There was a smile in his deep black eyes, and his voice was low and magnetic. "Baby, what are you thinking about?" Su Murong's hands hooked around his neck. She carefully looked at his face. His eyebrows were sharp and his nose was high. His facial features were similar to her godfather's. When he smiled, the similarity could reach up to 70 to 80%. The corner of her lips curled up slightly. She lightly said, "Nothing." The man leaned over and kissed her lips. His hands caressed her charming figure. She pushed his chest and lightly said, "Shenran, I'm not in the mood right now." "Okay." There was a hint of helplessness in Shenran's voice. He let go of her and sat on the chair beside her. He tilted his head and looked at her. "Darling, are you in a bad mood?" Su Murong supported her forehead with one hand. Her charming almond-shaped eyes flashed with a touch of sadness. "Do you think there's a need for my marriage to continue?" Shenran chuckled. "Darling, since you don't want that useless man anymore, just dump him and throw yourself into my arms. I've wanted to be your husband for many years." Su Murong glanced at him and lightly said, "Aren't you afraid that people will say that you're living off a woman? Moreover, I'm 20 years older than you." Shenran's lips curled up into a frivolous smile. "So what? True love doesn't care about age. I'm living off a woman. There's no need to worry about people gossiping." Su Murong reached out and patted his young and handsome face. Her eyes were cold. "Don't forget that other than our physical relationship, we don't talk about feelings. I don't have feelings anymore." Shenran's expression darkened. He self-deprecatingly curved his lips. "I thought I was special." She used her fingers to trace his handsome features. Her tone was indifferent. "You're special because in my heart, you're another man's substitute. Shenran, don't forget your identity just because I dote on you." Shenran smiled bitterly. "Okay, I'll remember." Su Murong satisfactorily patted his cheek. "Okay, let's go in first. I want to be alone for a while." Shenran nodded. He stood up with a white bath towel draped over his shoulders. He turned and walked towards the villa. His shiny black hair covered his forehead, and also covered the haze that flashed across his eyes. Xia Zhenqing was excited by his shocking discovery. All the blood in his body was boiling. He wanted to find out the truth as soon as possible to confirm his thoughts. However, he didn't know where to start the investigation. After thinking for a long time, he decided to hire a private investigator. Xia Zhenqing knew that Bailey Han was very powerful and often sent bodyguards to protect Xia Xia. If the private investigator followed Xia Xia, the bodyguards might find out and all his efforts would be in vain. Therefore, he asked the private investigator to secretly monitor Xia Yun's family. He guessed that if Xia Ling really didn't die, she would definitely contact her sister Xia Yun. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. The private investigator still didn't get any useful information. Xia Zhenqing, who was anxiously waiting, gradually lost his confidence. Maybe he was wrong. That old woman wasn't Xia Ling. His ex-wife Xia Ling had died in the fire. Just as his restless heart calmed down, the private investigator suddenly contacted him. Welfare Hongcha 866. Chapter 351. In a cafe. A man in a black suit and sunglasses was sitting by the window with a newspaper in his hand. He was reading it carefully. Xia Zhenqing sat down opposite him and asked in a low voice, "Any news?" The man put down the newspaper, took out a stack of photos from his pocket, and placed them on the table. Xia Yun went to the Jiangnan Shuigan district yesterday. Take a look at the photos yourself. Xia Zhenqing picked up the stack of photos and looked through them carefully. There were photos of Xia Yun shopping in the supermarket, and photos of her walking into the Jiangnan Shuigan district. Then, there were a few photos of her talking and laughing with the old woman when she knocked on the door of a house. Xia Zhenqing asked, "Did you hear their conversation?" "I heard it. I recorded it, but it was too far away and the recording was very noisy." The detective took a sip of coffee and said, "It was just a very normal conversation." Xia Yun said, "Sister, I'm here to see you." And the other woman smiled and welcomed her in. Xia Zhenqing asked excitedly, "Did you hear it clearly? Did she really call her sister?" "Of course I heard it clearly. Although it was far away, the corridor was very quiet, and the voices were especially clear." Xia Zhenqing's heart was beating violently in his chest. He couldn't help but tear up. His fingers clenched tightly in his palms, and his shoulders trembled rapidly. He didn't say a word for a long time. The detective frowned. "Mr. Xia, are you okay?" Xia Zhenqing buried his head and waved his hand. "No, I'm fine. Where did Xia Yun go? What's the specific address?" "Jiangnan Shuigan District, Block A, Unit 3, Room 501. Xia Zhenqing took the stack of photos out of the cafe and sat in the car in a daze for a long time. He looked at Xia Ling in the photo seriously. The scar on her face was so obvious, and her obviously disabled right leg must have been caused by the fire. He closed his eyes in heartache, not daring to look at it directly. After moving to the city, Xia Ling and Fu Chenghai lived a very comfortable life. Although they were not used to it at first, Xia Dong came to visit them every day, took them to the park for a walk, and let them learn to dance or sing with the old aunties in the park to pass the time. In addition, Fu Wei had finally started to work, so they were even happier and felt satisfied with their lives. However, they did not expect Xia Zhenqing to suddenly appear and break their peaceful life. Xia Ling and Fu Qinghai were watching TV in the living room when they heard a knock on the door. Fu Qinghai thought it was Xia Dong, so he shouted, "Coming, coming," and ran to open the door. Upon seeing the person outside the door, Fu Qinghai froze. "Old Fu, is Xia Xia here? Why are you standing at the door?" Xia Ling's voice came from the living room. Fu Qinghai looked flustered. When Xia Zhenqing heard Xia Ling's words, he was even more certain of her identity. He forced a smile. "Are you Fu Dehai?" Fu Qinghai's expression was ugly. "I'm not. You've got the wrong person." He was about to close the door when Xia Zhenqing suddenly blocked the door and said, "Dehai, don't hide it from me anymore. I know it's you. The person inside is Xia Ling. She's Xia Xia's mother, right?" Fu Qinghai lowered his voice. "You're not welcome here. Leave." He pushed the door forcefully, but Xia Zhenqing resisted with all his might. "Dehai, don't be like this. I want to talk to Xia Ling." Fu Qinghai's eyes were spitting fire. He lowered his voice and said, "What's there to talk about? You're already divorced. She's my wife now." The two old men pushed back and forth at the door, gritting their teeth as they competed. Xia Ling had already sensed that something was wrong. She asked curiously. Dahai, who is it? Fu Qinghai replied. It's an insurance salesman. Xiao Ling remembered that her son was also in the sales business, and her heart softened. She said, let him in. It's good to have a cup of tea. Xia Zhenxing said loudly, Xiao Ling, it's me. I want to talk to you. Xiao Ling's mind was blown. She was extremely familiar with this voice. It was this man who had broken her heart. She dragged her crippled leg and staggered to the door. She glared at Xia Zhenxing. I have nothing to talk to you about. Leave. Xiao Ling, I'm begging you. Let's talk. Xia Zhenxing looked at her pleadingly. Go. Hurry up and leave. I don't want to see you. Xiao Ling helped Fu Qinghai push Xia Zhenxing out of the door and slammed it shut. Xia Zhenxing did not give up. He banged on the door and shouted, Xiao Ling, open the door. Let's talk. Xiao Ling and her husband wanted to ignore him and let him bang on the door. However, he was shouting so loudly that if the neighbors heard him, they might gossip. Xiao Ling had no choice but to open the door. She stared at him expressionlessly. Come in. In the living room, Xia Zhenxing sat opposite Xiao Ling and her husband. Facing their cold gazes, he forced a bitter smile. Xiao Ling, I want to talk to you alone. Fu Qinghai's face darkened. He was about to explode when Xiao Ling patted the back of his hand and said, Old Fu, go into the room first. But Fu Qinghai was worried that Xia Zhenxing would hurt Xiao Ling. Xiao Ling smiled. It's fine. Go in first. Fu Qinghai sighed and left the living room. All right, it's just the two of us now. What do you want to say? Say it. Xiao Ling's face was cold. Xia Zhenxing looked pained. Ling, your face and legs, were they damaged by the fire? Xiao Ling sneered. Why? Do you think it's a pity that I didn't die in the fire? Ling, don't say that. I know you didn't die. I'm really happy. You're happy? You can't wait for me to die. I won't be an eyesore to you. Xia Zhenxing's eyes were filled with sorrow. Ling, I know I've let you and Xia down, but I have my reasons. Xiao Ling said angrily. Reasons? You have your reasons. Miss Rich took a liking to you. For money and status, you abandoned your wife and daughter. You have your reasons. Xia Zhenxing, aren't you afraid of being laughed at by others? Xia Zhenxing hurriedly said. Ling, I'm telling the truth. Listen to me. Xiao Ling looked at him coldly. Fine, tell me. I'd like to see what kind of lies you can come up with. Xia Zhenxing gritted his teeth. His face was pale. Years ago, I met Su Morong at an art exhibition. She said she fell in love with me at first sight and wanted to date me. Xiao Ling interrupted him sternly. That's enough. I don't want to know how you two hooked up. Xia Zhenxing, get out of here right now. She pointed at the door angrily. Ling, listen to me. I rejected her. I really did. I told her I had a wife and a daughter, but she didn't listen and continued to pester me. Once, I was eating with my colleagues at a restaurant. She was drunk and pestered me to send her home. I saw that it was dangerous for a woman to be drunk outside, so I kindly sent her home. Later, her servant poured me a glass of water. After I drank it, I lost consciousness. At this point, Xia Zhenxing's expression was pained, embarrassed, and a little guilty. Later, I woke up in her bed. Her parents rushed in, saying that I had ruined her innocence and forcing me to marry her. Xiao Ling raised her hand and slapped him. She said angrily, Keep lying. Keep lying. I'm not lying. I'm telling you the truth. Xia Zhenxing looked embarrassed. That memory was a stain in his life. He had hidden it in the bottom of his heart and hadn't touched it for more than 20 years. Now that he had opened it up, he was the one who was heartbroken. Xiao Ling said coldly, Even if what you said was true, why didn't you tell me back then? Xia Zhenxing covered his face with his hands. He was too ashamed to face her. I didn't know how to tell you. Also, her parents threatened me that I had to marry her. If I told anyone about this, not only would they sue the school and make me lose my job, they would also hurt you and Xia. Ling, I don't care if I lose my job, but I don't want them to hurt you and Xia. Tears rolled down from his fingers and dripped onto the coffee table, forming a puddle. Xiao Ling looked at the embarrassed man in front of her expressionlessly. You told me clearly back then that the person you loved was Su Morong. She could give you status and money, So I didn't believe a word you said. Xia Zhenxing, leave. Don't disturb my life ever again. Xia Zhenxing suddenly let go of his hands. His old face was covered with tears. He said painfully, Aling, I'm telling you the truth. I had no choice but to lie to you back then. Xia Ling sneered. Do you really think I'm stupid? Su Morong is a rich girl. Why would she degrade herself and marry you in such a lowly way? You're just a poor teacher. What do you have that's worth her doing that? I don't know. Xia Zhenxing had thought about this question for more than 20 years, but still couldn't figure it out. Because through these years of interaction, he could tell that Su Morong wasn't like what she said. She didn't fall in love with him at first sight, and marry no one else but him. Xia Ling snorted. That's right. I can't believe you could come up with such a illogical lie. I'm telling the truth. Aling, why can't you believe me just this once? Xia Dong looked defeated. Actually, after we divorced, I secretly went to see you and our daughter. Later, Su Morong found out and she even argued with me. She even threatened me that if I went to see you again, she would harm you, so I didn't dare to see you again. It wasn't until 5 years ago when I met Xia Xia that I found out that you set a fire and committed suicide. Aling, I'm sorry. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have become like this. Stop. Xia Ling stretched out her hand and said, Don't make yourself sound so important. I didn't commit suicide, and it wasn't because of you. The fire was just an accident. Xia Zhenxing was stunned. An accident? According to what he had heard from his former neighbors, Xia Ling couldn't forget the pain of being abandoned by him. Her small restaurant had been destroyed, and her life had become too difficult. So she abandoned her daughter and burned herself to death. Ad. Songshu 566. Chapter 352. Xia Ling's expression was cold. Commit suicide for a heartless man like you? I'm not that stupid. There's no way I'd abandon Xia Xia. Xia Zhenxing's face alternated between red and white. His mouth moved and he was about to say something when there was a knock on the door. Xia Ling didn't even look at Xia Zhenxing. She got up and limped to open the door. Xia Zhenxing looked at her crippled right leg. His heart ached so much that he almost couldn't breathe. Xia Ling was a famous beauty back then. When they were dating, everyone praised them for being a perfect match. However, life was unpredictable. Their happy family was ruined by Su Morong. This time, it was Xia Dong standing at the door with a bag of fruit in her hand. Xia Ling forced a smile. Xia Xia, you're here. Mom, what's wrong? Xia Dong acutely sensed that something was wrong with her mother's mood, so she asked her as she changed her shoes. Xia Ling pursed her lips and said, Xia Zhenxing is here. Xia Dong froze in the middle of changing her shoes. She paused for a moment, straightened up, and said in a low voice, He knows? Xia Ling nodded. He's still here. If you don't want to see him, you should avoid him for now. Xia Dong didn't look too good. It's fine. I'm not the one in the wrong anyway. She had already planned to let go of the grudge and improve her relationship with Xia Zhenxing. However, she couldn't control her emotions every time she thought of her mother's suffering. Xia Xia. Xia Zhenxing saw Xia Dong walking over with a cold expression and called out her name uneasily. Xia Dong ignored him and went straight to the kitchen. She sorted out the fruits and put them in the fridge before sitting next to her mother. She glanced at Xia Zhenxing indifferently and said calmly, What are you doing here? Xia Zhenxing's lips quivered a few times before he mumbled, I'm here to talk to your mother. What's there to talk about? You've been divorced for many years. Xia Dong's tone sounded extremely cold, as if she was facing a stranger. Xia Xia. I had my reasons back then. Su Morong's parents forced me to marry her. Otherwise, they would hurt you and your mother. I had no choice. Xia Ling was furious. Don't push all the blame onto me and Xia Xia. You're the one who's greedy. Aling, why don't you believe me? Xia Zhenxing felt helpless as he had returned to the starting point. Xia Ling said, You don't have to say any more. I won't believe anything you say. Just leave. In that case, I'll leave first. Let me know if you have any difficulties. Xia Zhenxing understood her temper. She was stubborn and she was still angry. It was already good enough that she didn't chase him out with a broom. It was better for him to leave first and come back when she calmed down. After Xia Zhenxing left, Xia Ling repeated what he said to Xia Dong. After Xia Dong heard it, her first reaction was the same as Xia Ling's. She thought that Xia Zhenxing was lying. However, after she thought about it logically, she felt that there was something suspicious. Mom, Xia Zhenxing said that after you divorced, he came to visit us. Su Morong found out about it and threatened to harm us if he ever came to visit us again. After that, your little restaurant was smashed. After that, you had an accident. If what Xia Zhenxing said is true. Xia Ling was shocked. You think that Su Morong was behind the smashing of the restaurant and the accident that happened to me? Xia Dong furrowed her brows. I'm only suspecting it. Of course, the prerequisite is that Xia Zhenxing is telling the truth. Xia Ling couldn't believe it as she shook her head. That's impossible. Xia Zhenxing has already divorced me. Even if he came to visit me, what could he do? Did Su Morong need to be so ruthless? I'm not a threat to her. Xia Dong sighed. Mom, you don't understand the Su family at all. To be able to give birth to a daughter like Su Xingqian, as a mother, how could she be easy to deal with? I still feel that there's something suspicious about this matter. I must get to the bottom of it. When her parents divorced, Xia Dong was only 6 or 7 years old. She didn't know much about what happened between them. The only thing she remembered was that her mother held her hand as they chased after Xia Zhenxing in the rain. Her mother accidentally fell and knelt in the rain as she cried. At that time there was lightning and thunder. The young girl was so scared that she was left with the after effect of being afraid of thunder. She wasn't clear about the situation at that time, but her aunt and uncle definitely remembered it. Hence, after Xia Dong said goodbye to her mother, she went to her aunt's house. Coincidentally, Gao Mingyuan didn't have class and was at home. Xia Dong explained the reason for her visit. Xia Yun and Gao Mingyuan's expressions turned serious. Xia Yun said, "Back then, your parents were very close. However, one day, your father suddenly invited your mother to a small tea house. At the same time, Su Morong appeared. Your father said that he likes Su Morong and wanted to divorce your mother. Your mother refused, so Su Morong took out a stack of money to send your mother away. Your mother felt insulted and slapped Su Morong. Your father was really a jerk. He actually slapped your mother back. She was furious. She gritted her teeth and said, at that time, your mother wanted to get your father back. She even put down her pride and knelt down to beg him. However, he was still determined to divorce her. Your mother was heartbroken by him and had no choice but to divorce him. That's basically what happened back then. I think Xia Zhenxing was very willing to marry Su Morong. It didn't seem like he was forced at all." Speaking of that man, Xia Yun's face was full of disgust. Gao Mingyuan frowned and thought for a moment. He said, "Actually, there's one more thing that I haven't mentioned to anyone." Xia Yun was stunned. "Is it about Xia Zhenxing?" Gao Mingyuan said seriously. "You can say that. Wife, do you still remember that I was there when Big Sister's restaurant was smashed?" Xia Yun nodded. "I remember. Don't keep me in suspense. Hurry up and tell me." That day, a group of gangsters inexplicably rushed in and smashed Big Sister's restaurant without saying anything. After smashing it, they ran away. At that time, I wanted to chase after them and send them to the police station. In the end, I chased them to a street and found that the leader of the gangsters took a stack of money from a woman. It seemed that the woman had bribed them. Xia Dong asked nervously, "Who is that woman?" "I only saw her side profile. She quickly got into a car and ran away. I can't confirm her identity, but I suspect that it's Su Morong." Xia Yun's expression changed. She said anxiously, "Why didn't you say such an important thing at that time?" Gao Mingyuan smiled bitterly. "When I called the police, I mentioned it to the police station. They said that they would investigate, but in the end, the investigation was left unsettled. As for that woman's identity, I only guessed. I didn't have any evidence, so I didn't mention it to you." Xia Dong frowned. If Su Morong really ordered people to smash the restaurant, then the fire could also be man-made. Xia Yun said angrily, If the fire was also caused by Su Murong, we can't let her go. We must let her be punished by the law. After all, the fire happened so many years ago. It was not easy to investigate clearly. Fortunately, with the help of Bailey Han, they were able to get the details of the incident from the police station. They also asked the bureau chief to send the most powerful criminal police to investigate this matter. Su family. Su Xingchen was discharged from the hospital. After nearly a year of plastic surgery, Su Xingchen's face looked a lot better. It was not as scary as before, but it would never be able to return to her previous appearance. She was now full of inferiority towards her face. Even at home, she wore a mask and hat, only revealing her eyes. In her room, other than Su Murong, no one was allowed to enter, not even Xia Jinxing. As long as the servants looked at her, she would fly into a rage. No matter what was in her hand, she would not hesitate to throw it at them. Once, she threw a bowl of steaming hot chicken soup at a maid, causing blisters to appear on the maid's chest. The Su family's servants were submissive in front of her, silent like cicadas in winter. In fact, they were all silently praying that a month would pass quickly, because Su Xingchen could only stay at home for a month before she was sent back to prison to serve her sentence. Su Murong had to worry about her daughter's situation, while also taking care of the company's affairs. She had a headache. She rubbed her eyebrows and leaned on the sofa. The maid who followed her orders to monitor Xia Jinxing walked to her side and respectfully said, "Madam, Sir went to Jiangnan Shuiyan district again today." Su Murong put down her hand and stared sharply at the maid. "Xiao, did you find out who lives there?" "I found out. It's an old couple. The man is called Fu Qinghai and the woman is called Xiaoling." Su Murong's eyes suddenly widened. "What did you say? Xiaoling?" "Yes, that woman has a scar on her face and her right leg is disabled. In the process of my investigation, I found out that Xia Dong went to visit them. They seem to be very close." Close. Of course they were close. Because Xiaoling was Xia Dong's mother. That fire actually did not burn her to death. That woman's life was really tough, just like that slut of a daughter of hers. Su Murong's face was gloomy. Her smooth and well-manicured fingertips fiercely dug into her palms. Her eyes were deep and cold. "Do you know what Sir did when he went to Jiangnan Shuiyan district?" Xiao shook her head. "I'm not sure. He only stayed there for half an hour. After he came out, his mood was a bit strange. He seemed to be very sad." Su Murong raised her hand and coldly said, "All right, let's not talk about him anymore." "Yes." Xiao nodded respectfully. Su Murong was silent for a moment before slowly saying, "Xiao, is there any news about Godfather?" "Not yet." Su Murong supported her forehead with one hand and tiredly waved her hand. "All right, you can leave first. Continue to inquire about Godfather." Not long after Xiao left, Su Xingchen hugged a pillow and knocked on her door. "Mommy, I can't sleep. Can I sleep with you?" Su Murong's brows relaxed and a smile appeared on her face. "Come in." The mother and daughter lay on the same bed. Su Xingchen curled up in Su Murong's arms and raised his head. He said pitifully, "Mommy, there's actually something that I've been hiding from you." Welfare, Xinwu 799. Chapter 353. Su Murong gently stroked her hair and said softly, "What's the matter?" Su Xingchen hugged her waist and said softly, "When I was in junior high school, I met a very, very good uncle. In the end, he took me as his goddaughter. I think he treats me better than daddy. No matter what I want, he will help me get it. No matter what trouble I get into, he will help me settle it." Su Murong knew that she was talking about her godfather, Shangguan Ao. Her heart ached and she hugged her tightly. Half a year ago, Godfather suddenly said that he was going abroad and said that he would contact me. But until now he hasn't contacted me and I can't contact him. "Mommy, do you think Godfather doesn't want me because I've become ugly?" Su Xingchen, who was as irritable as a fire-breathing dragon in front of the servants, was now like a little lamb. Her big, watery eyes stared pitifully at Su Murong. Su Murong's nose turned sour, and she almost couldn't hold back her tears. She bit her lip and forced a smile. "No, Xingchen, your godfather won't abandon you. Godfather gave me a special phone before. He said that as long as I use that phone, I can contact him no matter when or where. But now, I can't reach him even with the special phone. If it's not that he doesn't want me, then something must have happened. Su Xingchen's eyes were filled with panic. Mommy, will Godfather be okay? Su Morong didn't know how to answer her. Ever since that night when she and her godfather made love, her feelings for him showed signs of rekindling. She couldn't help but want to find him. But after a long time, she still couldn't find his whereabouts. In fact, Su Morong had the same worry. Her godfather had met with an accident. Mika Kito had used Xingchen to force her godfather to show himself. After that, her godfather disappeared. She even suspected that his disappearance had something to do with Mika Kito. Mommy. Su Xingchen tugged at her robe. Su Morong returned to her senses. She stroked her daughter's hair and said softly, "Baby, don't think about it anymore. Your godfather will be fine." She was comforting her daughter and herself. And okay. Su Xingchen threw herself into her arms. Su Morong stroked her hair from time to time and stared blankly at the chandelier on the ceiling. His thoughts wandered off somewhere. Su Xingchen said gloomily, "Mommy, I'll be sent back to prison in 10 days, right? Mommy, I don't want to go to prison. Can you help me?" Su Morong was helpless. "Xingchen, Mommy has no choice. Your sentence has long been decided." Su Xingchen. I don't want to leave you." Su Morong held her daughter's tear-stained face and said softly, "Xingchen, listen to me. As long as you behave well, Mommy can find someone to shorten your sentence. You just have to endure for 1 or 2 years. Trust me, baby." Su Xingchen burst into tears. 1 or 2 years. She didn't want to stay in prison for even 1 or 2 days. If only her godfather was here. He might be able to find a way to help her. Godfather, where did he go? Su Morong took a tissue from the bedside table and wiped her daughter's tears. She comforted her. "Baby, don't cry. Trust Mommy. You'll get better soon." Under her comfort, Su Xingchen gradually stopped sobbing. Su Morong stroked her daughter's hair. Her eyes were cold. Every time she saw her poor daughter, she hated Mika Kito, Xia Dong, and the others to the core. No, she couldn't let Xia Dong and Mika Kito live a good life so easily. She knew that she didn't have the ability to fight against Mika Kito, but she could at least hurt him indirectly. As long as she hurt Xia Dong, it was the same as hurting Mika Kito. Her eyes darted around. She was already planning how to deal with Xia Dong and Xia Ling. Axiu wasn't an ordinary maid. She was the last gift that Shangguan Ao gave to Su Morong when he abandoned Su Morong. Axiu was actually a very skilled assassin. She had the superb martial arts and excellent investigative skills of an assassin. Therefore, Su Morong trusted her to investigate Xia Dong's family. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy. First, she had to know Xia Dong's Achilles heel. Only then could she deal with her better. Fu Wei was very excited. He finally got his first order. The client was a 3-star hotel. The hotel manager negotiated with him and decided to sign the order the next day. The next day, he dressed up in a shiny suit and leather shoes. He looked handsome and dashing. He carried his briefcase and walked confidently into the hotel with his chest puffed out. But half an hour later he was thrown out by a few security guards with his face covered in dirt. There was no other reason. The hotel manager went back on his word. He said that he wasn't willing to buy their company's management software, and had already signed an agreement with another software company. Fu Wei was very angry. He was young and impetuous. He fell out with the manager on the spot and scolded him. In the end, he was chased out by the security guards. Fu Wei stood outside the hotel building and pulled his tie angrily. He ignored the curious gazes of the crowd and cursed the hotel manager who went back on his word. Suddenly, an arm patted him on the shoulder. "Hey brother, what are you doing?" Fu Wei's cursing voice came to an abrupt stop. He impatiently turned around and saw the man in front of him. His face immediately revealed a smile. "I was wondering who it was. So it's you." The man was wearing a pair of loose jeans and a black vest. The muscles on his arms bulged like a small hill. His hair was tied up to his neck, and he wore a thick gold necklace around his neck. He had thick eyebrows and a straight nose. His appearance was rough and his whole body exuded a masculine aura. He looked at Fu Wei from head to toe. Ah Wei, you didn't contact your buddies for a while. You came here to do this? His eyes stared at his briefcase. Fu Wei smiled embarrassedly. Ah Chong, you know that I owe a lot of gambling debts. The sales are quick. I can't do anything about it. Ah Chong patted his shoulder and laughed heartily. When you dress up like this, you really do look like something. How is it? Is work going well? Fu Wei looked depressed. Hey, don't mention it. I was just chased out. The manager of this hotel is a King bastard. We had already agreed to sign the order yesterday. Today he suddenly went back on his word. I really want to King beat him up. Forget it. Don't be depressed. How can work be so easy? We haven't seen each other in a long time. Let's go for a drink. Fu Wei scratched his head awkwardly. I can't. I'm still working. Ah Chong slapped him on the back and stared at him with a pair of bell-like eyes. Kid, do you dare to be a little more promising? What's work? Monkey and Snake Boy also want to see you. Let's go. Don't dawdle like a girl. Ah Chong was a head taller than Fu Wei, who was 1.7 meters tall. In addition, he had a strong and sturdy body. With his ape arm around his shoulder, he directly dragged him away. A flashy motorcycle was parked by the side of the road. Ah Chong picked up a helmet and handed it to him. He put on the other one and patted the back seat. Hurry up and get on. Fu Wei was already unhappy that his client stood him up. In addition, his buddies were waiting for him. The last bit of hesitation in his heart dissipated. He got on the motorcycle and threw his work to the back of his mind. Fu Wei saw Monkey and Snake Boy in Ah Chong's rented apartment. Monkey was a very thin young man. He wore loose clothes on his body as if a gust of wind could blow him away. Although he looked like this, among these people he was the most ruthless. When he fought, he did not show any mercy. He had once stabbed someone to death with a knife. Snake Boy had dyed his hair in all kinds of colors and had shiny earrings on his ears. With a cigarette in his mouth, he punched Fu Wei's chest and said in a hooligan manner, "You're really something, you brat. You abandoned us brothers and went to be a white-collar worker." Fu Wei chuckled. "I had no other choice. At worst, I'll pay for tonight's expenses." Monkey jumped over and wrapped his arms around his neck. He laughed sinisterly. "You said it. We're going to Mr. Rich Boss tonight. The chicks there are the prettiest." "Okay, Mr. Rich Boss it is. Let's go." Fu Wei calculated the money in his wallet. There was still a sum of money left from the last time his sister gave him. In addition to the money he recently swindled from his parents, it should be enough. Snake Boy tugged at his clothes and sneered. "You're going dressed like this? You'll make people laugh their heads off." Monkey dug out a few clothes from the pile of clothes on the sofa and threw them to him. "Change." Fu Wei sniffed in disgust. "Did you just change out of these?" Monkey punched him in annoyance. "Of course not. These are the clean clothes I just collected from the balcony." "Then I'm relieved." Mr. Rich Bar was the busiest and most chaotic bar in the red light district. There were all kinds of people here. As soon as they stepped in, they were infected by the shocking electronic music and noisy cheers inside. Their blood was boiling all over. On the stage, a group of beauties with heavy makeup and wearing bikinis were dancing a hot erotic dance with a white feather in their hands. From time to time, they would throw flirtatious glances at the men below the stage whose eyes were burning with fire. Their souls were about to be taken away. Monkey and Snake Boy drooled as they watched. They excitedly squeezed to the side of the stage, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Fu Wei and Ah Chong found a seat on the second floor and ordered more than a dozen bottles of beer. One for each of them. The two clinked their bottles and drank. After having fun with the beauties, Monkey and Snake Boy happily climbed upstairs and sat heavily on the soft sofa. They picked up a bottle of wine and drank. Monkey and Ah Wei clinked their bottles and said, "Ah Wei, you're amazing now. You have a rich sister." Snake Boy's ears perked up. "I heard that your sister married the president of Shanghao Group. You can just ask them for money to pay off your gambling debts. Why do you have to go out and work yourself? It's so hard." Ah Wei's face was bitter. "You think I don't want to, but my sister and brother-in-law are stingy. They're stingy and said that they want me to be independent." Monkey rolled his eyes and laughed sinisterly. Idiot, if they don't want to take the money, you have to find a way to make them bleed. Ad. Hongcha 866. Chapter 354. Monkey was the one with the most ideas among them. To put it bluntly, he was full of tricks. Fu Wei's interest was piqued. Monkey, what idea do you have? Monkey crossed his arms and raised his eyebrows. Kidnapping. Fu Wei was stunned. Kidnapping my sister? That's not a good idea, is it? You're stupid. Monkey slapped him on the head. Your sister lives in the villa and has so many people protecting her. How can we kidnap her? Then who are we kidnapping? It can't be kidnapping my parents, right? Fu Wei touched his head that was hurting from the slap and asked in bewilderment. Snake Boy slapped the table and laughed. Ah Wei, I've already guessed what monkey means. You still don't understand. You're really stupid. Ah Chong also laughed, as if he had already understood monkey's spirit. Fu Wei looked at the three of them laughing together, and suddenly thought of something. You guys aren't talking about kidnapping me, right? Monkey patted him on the shoulder in relief. You finally understand. We will make it look like a kidnapping and get your parents to fork out a large sum of money. If your parents can't fork out the money, they will definitely ask your sister for help. This way, won't the money be in your hands? Fu Wei hurriedly shook his head. No, this isn't good. Monkey was surprised. Why? The three of us are only helping you to pretend to be kidnapping. We won't hurt you or your family. We just want a ransom. Fu Wei still shook his head. He couldn't tell why, but he just felt that it wasn't right. Although he often lied to his parents and asked them for money, he still couldn't do something like pretending to be kidnapping. Ah Chong advised him. Ah Wei, think about it carefully. Didn't you say that work wasn't going well? This is a good way to easily raise money. No, I'll think of another way. If it doesn't work, I'll continue to work hard. Fu Wei picked up the beer and took a big gulp, still not relenting. Monkey rolled his eyes and smiled. Forget it, Ah Chong. Don't try to persuade him anymore. Otherwise, he might think that we have some ideas. Snake Boy punched him in annoyance. Monkey, what nonsense are you talking about? We're all thinking for our way. What ideas can we have? Snake Boy, don't King touch me. Monkey was indignant and wanted to punch back at Snake Boy. Fu Wei hurriedly stopped them. Stop fighting. I know you are doing this for my own good. Good brothers, don't hurt our friendship. Come, let's drink. Stop fooling around. Ah Chong picked up his bottle and clinked it against theirs. Monkey and Snake Boy glared at each other angrily and reluctantly picked up the wine bottle to drink. Fu Wei did not take their words to heart. The next day, he continued to throw himself into the marketing battle. However, the situation was getting more and more serious. The hotels that were interested in buying the software refused to meet with Fu Wei again. He almost broke his legs from running around, facing the supercilious and indifferent eyes of others, but he still didn't get anything. After a month, he didn't sell a set of software and only received a basic salary of a few thousand yuan. Seeing that there were only 2 months left before the deadline with the casino, and the 100,000 yuan was nowhere to be seen, Fu Wei began to panic. At this critical juncture, someone from the casino called him. Ah Wei, there are only 2 months left. How's the money coming along? Fu Wei's tone was not very good. We agreed that within 3 months, you are not allowed to harass me. What is the meaning of this now? The other party sneered. I'm afraid that you will run away. When that time comes, where will I find you? Don't worry, I definitely won't run away. The money I owe you will not be a single cent less. That's good. Hurry up and raise the money. If you dare to trick us, you know how powerful we are. After hanging up the phone, Fu Wei grabbed his hair angrily. Suddenly, a light flashed in his mind. Monkey's suggestion of kidnapping came up, but he quickly suppressed it. No, I can't do this. If sister and brother-in-law find out the truth, they will kill me. His phone suddenly rang again. Fu Wei did not even look at the caller ID. He directly put the phone to his ear and said irritably, "Didn't I say that I will definitely pay you back? Stop harassing me." The other party paused and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? I'm Monkey. Fu Wei laughed dryly. Monkey, it's you. I thought it was the gang from the casino. Why are you looking for me? It's the weekend. Aren't you resting? Come out with your brothers for a gathering. Fu Wei said dejectedly. Forget it, I'm not in the mood. What's wrong? Were you cooked? No, it's just that work is not going well. All right, you're a man. Don't act like a woman. Isn't it just work that's not going well? Come out and have a few drinks. Forget all your troubles. In the bar, Fu Wei could not help but complain to his brothers. Monkey thought for a while and said, How about you think about my previous suggestion? Snake Boy said carelessly, Monkey, Away wants to be a good person now. Don't tempt him anymore. Monkey said dejectedly, I'm being nosy. After a few drinks, Fu Wei's courage was boosted. He slammed the glass on the table. I'm going all out. I'll do as you say and pretend to kidnap you. The three of them were stunned. Ah Chong patted him on the shoulder. Away, have you thought about it? I've thought about it. I've had enough of smiling at people every day. Fu Wei was furious when he thought about the anger he had suffered these days. As the saying goes, anger rises from the heart, and evil grows from the side. This was the true portrayal of him now. Monkey patted Fu Wei on the shoulder and said, That's more like a man. Away, don't worry. We'll definitely help you. Fu Wei's gaze swept across the three of them and nodded gratefully. Good brothers, I'm relying on you guys. Don't tell anyone about this. If my sister knows the truth, she'll definitely kill me. Don't worry, we know what we're doing. Snake Boy patted his chest and promised. The four of them did as they said. They gathered in Ah Chong's rented house and discussed how to carry out this kidnapping, while smoking. The commander-in-chief Monkey touched his chin and said, First of all, we have to find a hiding place. In order to make it real, Away will have to live there, and someone will have to watch over him. Ah Chong thought for a moment and said, I know there's an abandoned factory in the suburbs. I'll go with Away. As he said that, he laughed. I look like a vicious kidnapper, don't I? Okay, I'll leave this to you. Monkey turned his gaze to Snake Boy. Snake Boy, you'll be in charge of contacting Away's parents and monitoring their every move. No problem. Monkey added, I'll be in charge of the transaction. When the time comes, let them send someone to deliver the ransom to the factory. Fu Wei raised his hand. What if my parents call the police? Of course, we have to threaten them in advance. They're not allowed to call the police. If they do, they'll kill the hostage. What if they're not threatened and call the police? Monkey and the other two looked at each other. Obviously, the three of them had not considered this problem. Snake Boy coughed and said, I'll be in charge of monitoring your family. If they call the police, we'll immediately cancel the operation. Yes, that's right. If we're really that unlucky, we'll have to cancel the operation to avoid falling into the hands of the cops. Fu Wei scratched his head in annoyance. I still have a question. Why do you want someone to deliver the ransom to the factory? What if they bring the police over? Monkey smiled proudly. Even if they bring the police to the factory, they won't be able to catch us because before that, Ah Chong will have already evacuated with you. I'll also hide in the distance and make sure that they've left before going to get the money, Snake Boy said. I think it's best to get your mother to send the money over. Why? Your mother's legs aren't good. Even if she discovers Monkey's whereabouts, she won't be able to catch up with Monkey. Fu Wei frowned. That's true. But Monkey, you can't hurt my mother. That's for sure. We're doing this for money. Why would we hurt your mother? Okay, then it's settled. The four of them gathered again and discussed some details. Finally, they went back to their respective homes. 2 days later, Fu Wei was kidnapped as expected. That night he didn't return home at midnight. Xiaoling called his cell phone, but it was turned off. At first, she thought that he was fooling around with his friends again, and didn't take it to heart. When she couldn't contact him the next day, she panicked. At that moment, an unknown number called home. Auntie, your son is now in my hands. You're not allowed to call the police. Give me a ransom of 200,000 yuan within a day. Otherwise, you'll never see your son again. Xiaoling almost fainted. Her fingers gripped the phone tightly and she said anxiously, Please let my son go. We don't have any money to give you. Don't bargain with me. If you don't have money, why would you live in such a high-end neighborhood like the Jiangnan River? To tell you the truth, I've been watching you for a long time. Xiaoling forced herself to calm down and said, How do I know that my son is really in your hands? Snake Boy was prepared. He pressed the button on the recording pen and placed it near the receiver of the public phone. Xiaoling heard Fu Wei's recording. Who are you? Why did you kidnap me? Ah. Don't hurt me. Dad, Mom, save me. Fu Wei's heart-wrenching screams came from the phone. Xiaoling cried out anxiously. Don't hurt my son. Please don't hurt him. If you don't give me the 200,000 yuan within 24 hours, I'll cut off your son's fingers one by one. No, don't hurt my son. I'll send it. I'll find a way to get the 200,000 yuan. Now hurry up and think of a way to get the money. I'll call you at 2 in the afternoon and tell you where to send the money. I'm warning you, if you dare to call the police, you'll have to collect your son's corpse. Without waiting for Xiaoling to speak, Snake Boy hung up the phone and walked out of a street phone booth not far from the neighborhood. There was a strange smile on his lips. Welfare Xingwu 799. Chapter 355. Xiaoling was about to break down. She quickly called Fu Qinghai back from the park and called Xia Dong to explain the situation. Xia Dong heard that the situation was serious and notified Bailey Han on the way to the Jiangnan Shuigan district. In less than an hour, the family gathered to discuss countermeasures. Knowing that the kidnappers only asked for $200,000 and did not ask for too much, Bailey Han analyzed that the kidnappers were probably just gangsters. As long as their ransom was met, they should be able to guarantee Fu Wei's safety. Bailey Han said in a low voice, Mom, don't worry. I'll get someone to withdraw $200,000 from the bank right now. Even so, Xiaoling was still very worried. Firstly, she was worried about Fu Wei's safety. Secondly, she was worried that the kidnappers would find out about the relationship between Fu Wei and Bailey Han and use this as an opportunity to increase the ransom or threaten Bailey's family. Soon Lu Zihao sent $200,000 in cash over in a password-protected box. Ahu and Abeo came along with him. The two of them brought some high-tech equipment to track phone signals. The family sat in the living room, waiting for the kidnapper's call. Ring, ring, ring. The ear-piercing ringtone of the phone rang in the silent living room. Bailey Han reached out his hand and gestured for everyone not to answer the call. After Abeo nodded at him, indicating that they were ready, he pressed the speaker button. It was Snakey's voice. Auntie, you have to deliver the ransom alone to Yangon Machinery Factory in the suburbs at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I'm warning you, you can only deliver it alone. If I find out that you've called the police or that someone else is following you, I will kill your son. Xiaoling looked up at Bailey Han. Bailey Han pointed at her leg, and then pointed at his nose. She immediately understood and said, My leg is not convenient, so I might delay the transaction. Can you send someone else to deliver the ransom? Snakey refused decisively. No, you can try if you don't want to see your son again. Okay, I got it. I'll leave now. Xiaoling deliberately delayed and said, I want to know if my son is safe now. He is safe now. Before we receive the ransom, we will not harm him. I want to talk to my son. Cut the crap and give me the money. Otherwise, I'll kill him immediately. Snake Boy was now in a public phone booth not far from their neighborhood. There was no way for Xiaoling to talk to Fu Wei, so he threatened her fiercely and hung up the phone with a bang. Abeo pointed at a small red dot on the computer screen and said, Young master, I've locked onto the target. It's at a public phone booth near the residential area. Bailey Han's gaze turned cold, and he said in a deep voice, Ahu, go downstairs and search. Be careful not to alert the enemy. Ahu responded and immediately went downstairs. Xiaoling stood up from the sofa. I'll send the money to the kidnappers right now. Bailey Han stopped her. Mom, don't worry. I'll arrange this. On the other side, in an abandoned factory, with a cigarette in his mouth, Fu Wei sat on a chair and played poker with Ah Chong. I won again. Ah Chong, why are you so absent-minded today? Ah Chong threw the poker cards on the chair, spat out the cigarette butt in his mouth, and crushed it with his foot. Stop playing poker. It's about time. I'll tie you up first and put on a show. Fu Wei frowned. There's no need. We'll be retreating soon anyway. It's better to put on a show. If something unexpected happens, we won't be flustered. Ah Chong picked up the rope that he had prepared and walked to his side. Come on, brother. It's been hard on you. All right, for the money, I have to suffer a little. Fu Wei put his hands behind his back and put his wrists together. Hey, Ah Chong, be gentler. Don't tie me up so tightly. Ah Chong pursed his lips. With a sullen face, he tied his hands up forcefully and turned a deaf ear to his cries. After tying him up, his strong arms grabbed Fu Wei's arm tightly and he said in a deep voice, Let's go. We'll change our position. Fu Wei refused and muttered, Loosen the rope for me. My wrists hurt. Ah Chong's eyebrows showed impatience. It's just for a while. Bear with it. He roughly grabbed Fu Wei's collar and dragged him out of the factory. Let's go. It's getting late. If your mother comes early, things will be troublesome. Hey, Ah Chong, be fucking gentler. Fu Wei was dragged by Ah Chong to a white van parked outside the factory. Monkey, who was sitting in the driver's seat, jumped out of the car and patted Ah Chong's shoulder. With a strange smile, he said, Ah Chong, I'll leave Ah Wei to you. I'm now in charge of welcoming Ah Wei's mother. Ah Chong nodded and stuffed Fu Wei into the front passenger seat. He jumped into the driver's seat and stepped on the accelerator. The van kicked up a cloud of dust and sped away. The two of them did not go to the agreed place. Instead, they went to the seaside of Repulse Bay. Ah Chong, what are we doing here? Fu Wei looked around in confusion. This was obviously a pier. There were many fishermen's boats docked at the seaside. There were also speedboats and ships. You'll know soon enough. Ah Chong expressionlessly opened the car door and pulled him out of the front passenger seat. Ah Chong took off his t-shirt and covered his tied wrists. He pulled his arm and walked towards the pier. Hey, Ah Chong, wait a minute. What are we doing so far away? Tell me clearly. If you don't tell me clearly, I won't go with you. Fu Wei stopped and refused to move. There were many people busy at the pier. No one had the time to pay attention to the two of them. Ah Chong's face was stiff and his tone was somewhat unhappy. Ah Wei, what do you mean by this? You were the one who begged us to help you put on this show. Now, with your attitude, are you suspecting me? Fu Wei chuckled. I'm not suspecting you. I just think it's strange. Don't keep me in suspense. Why are we here? Ah Chong sighed. All right, I'll tell you. We agreed to move to my rented house, but I was worried that your mother would play tricks and bring the police here. If they catch Monkey, they will quickly find out where we are. So I changed my mind and brought you to the seaside. Fu Wei was stunned. What about Monkey? If Monkey is really caught, we'll say that it's just a joke. There's no kidnapping at all. It's very simple to clear Monkey's name. Ah Chong did not want to talk about this topic anymore. He patted him on the shoulder. Let's go. There's no point in us standing here. I've already rented a boat. Let's go sit on the boat and wait for their good news. Although Fu Wei still had doubts in his heart, he didn't think too much about it. He followed Ah Chong onto a fishing boat. After all, he had been brothers with Ah Chong and Monkey for 2 years. He had never thought that they would harm him. Fu Wei had just stepped into the cabin when he saw a very beautiful middle-aged woman sitting inside. He was greatly surprised and was about to ask Ah Chong when he suddenly felt a pain in the back of his head. His vision went black and he fell to the ground with a plop. Ah Chong's right hand formed a palm as he glanced at Ah Wei, who was unconscious on the ground. He slowly withdrew his right hand and said to the middle-aged woman, I've already brought Ah Wei over as you requested. I don't want to participate in what happens next. The woman smiled. All right, according to the agreement, I'll pay you half of the money first. After your friend brings Xiaoling over, I'll pay you the other half. Her fair and slender fingers held a check and handed it to him. Ah Chong took the check from her hand and quickly glanced at the numbers on it before stuffing it into his pocket. He didn't even look at Fu Wei, who was lying on the ground, as he turned and left the fishing boat. A minute later, a woman wearing jeans and a white shirt entered the cabin. She glanced at Fu Wei and said, Madam, what do we do now? Ah Xiao, put him in a corner and tie his legs. Then, let old Xiao drive the fishing boat out to sea. After Monkey brings Xiaoling to the seaside, tell him the coordinates. This woman was Su Morong. She leisurely leaned back in her chair and calmly commanded, just in case, their boat left the dock first. After confirming that Xiaoling had come alone to deliver the ransom, she would let Monkey escort her to see her. Xiao found a rope from the cabin and tied Fu Wei's legs. Then, like throwing trash, she threw him into a corner and said to Su Morong, "Madam, I'll let old Xiao drive the boat now." Su Morong nodded. Inside the cockpit sat a muscular man. His face was cold and his body exuded a murderous aura. He was old Xiao, a retired Special Forces soldier from Vietnam. He was now Su Morong's bodyguard. The fishing boat quickly left the harbor and headed towards the vast sea. At this time, Xiaoling had already taken a taxi and arrived at the outskirts of the city. It took her a lot of effort to find the abandoned factory. The factory's iron gate was open and weeds were overgrown. She limped into the factory with her walking stick. Because she was worried about Fu Wei's situation, her eyes were filled with anxiety. The factory was empty. There was not a single person in sight. There were only 2 chairs, 2 empty mineral water bottles, and some breadcrumbs and bread bags. Xiaoling hurriedly looked around with her walking stick and shouted, "Away, where are you?" There was no response in the huge factory. Only her echoes could be heard. "Away, where are you?" Xiaoling was anxious. She refused to give up. She limped around, looking for traces of Wei and the kidnappers. Suddenly, a young and thin man walked in from the factory entrance. He stared coldly at Xiaoling and said, "Stop looking. There's no one else here other than you and me. Attention, Xingwu 799. Chapter 356. Xiaoling hugged the suitcase tightly and took a few steps back. "Who are you?" The skinny man was none other than Monkey. He had been lying in ambush around the factory, and only came out to meet Xiaoling after confirming that she was alone. He sneered, "I'm the one who kidnapped your son. Come with me, I'll take you to see your son." Xiaoling did not hesitate. She followed Monkey for a few hundred meters, and got into a black Volkswagen Santana at a secluded intersection. Monkey was not only ruthless but also meticulous. He was worried that Xiaoling would secretly call the police and get them to lie in ambush on the way out of the factory. Hence, he deliberately chose a different road from the one Xiaoling had taken. He drove the car through the middle of the abandoned factory. Half an hour later, the car was on the road to the beach. The sky was blue and the water was clear. The sun had already set in the west. The fishermen were returning one after another, and the sailors were busy moving the goods onto the ships. The harbor was bustling with activity. It was a scene of prosperity. Monkey brought Xiaoling to a fishing boat and lifted his chin. "Get on the boat." Xiaoling sized up the fishing boat and took a step back with the suitcase. "Where's Wei? I want to see Wei." "Cut the crap and get on the boat." Monkey grabbed her arm and dragged her onto the boat. She was forced into the cabin. The boat did not look big, but the cabin was different. There were a few seats and 2 men. One was Monkey's partner, Snake Boy, and the other was the bodyguard Su Morong had sent to keep an eye on them, Meng. Chang did not appear. Meng was a burly man. Unlike Old Owl, he was not a retired soldier but an international mercenary. His skills were also top-notch. He waved his hand and gestured for Monkey to tie up Xiaoling's hands and feet. Monkey held the rope and approached Xiaoling step by step with an evil smile on his face. Xiaoling's face was pale. She hugged the suitcase and stumbled back. What do you want?" "I've brought the money. Please return my son to me." "Hee auntie, you'll see your son soon." Monkey forced her into a corner and shook the rope in his hand. "I advise you to cooperate. Otherwise, you'll be the one suffering." Xiaoling suddenly stuck her head out of the window and shouted, "Help!" Snakey grabbed her hair and forcefully pulled her in. He said fiercely, "Auntie, even if you shout until your throat breaks, no one will come to save you because our ship has already started." The fishing boat had already left the coast and was sailing towards the vast sea. When Xiaoling poked her head out, she realized that there were no other boats around the fishing boat. She gritted her teeth and said, "What do you want?" "You just need to come with us." Monkey snatched the password-protected box from her arms and threw it to Snake Boy. Then, ignoring her struggles, he tied her wrists together and tied her legs. Xiaoling's hands and feet were tied. She sat on a chair and glared angrily at Monkey and the others. Monkey's ferocious expression when he faced Xiaoling was replaced by a flattering smile. "Brother Meng, we've brought her here. When can we get the other half of the reward?" Meng looked at him expressionlessly. "When you see Madam, she will naturally give it to you." Xiao sent the coordinates of their ship, and Meng and the others sailed in that direction. After sailing for close to an hour, they arrived at a deserted island. There was already a fishing boat docked by the beach. It was the same boat that Su Morong and the others had come on. After the boat docked, Monkey and Snake Boy each grabbed Xiaoling's arms and dragged her off the boat onto the deserted island. Not far from the beach, Su Morong and the others stood in the wind. Fu Wei had already awakened and was standing beside Su Morong. His hands and feet were tied and his mouth was sealed with black tape. When he saw Xiaoling, his eyes flashed with a complicated light, and he made muffled sounds from his throat. "Away, away," Xiaoling shouted excitedly. She ignored her crippled legs and jumped towards Fu Wei. No one stopped her. After all, they were heading towards Su Morong. Xiaoling had only jumped about 10 steps and was already panting. However, when she saw her son who was dozens of meters away, her eyes were resolute. She did not stop and continued to jump towards him. Her hair was disheveled and her face was flushed. Sweat broke out on her forehead. As her hands were tied, she could not maintain her balance and almost fell to the ground a few times. Fu Wei's eyes stared straight at his mother. The guilt in his heart was like a flood that had broken through a dam, drowning him. His nose turned sour, tears welled up in his eyes, and a painful whimper came from his throat. Xiaoling's pathetic state pleased Su Morong. She laughed out loud. "Xiaoling, look at you now. You're like a stray dog struggling at death's door. You still have the nerve to live in this world. What a disgrace." Fu Wei was furious. He turned around and glared at Su Morong. The tears in his eyes had not dried, but they were already burning with anger. "Little brat, what are you looking at? You'll be in for it later." Su Morong sneered and raised his foot to kick Fu Wei's knee. Fu Wei's legs went soft, and he almost knelt on the ground, but he gritted his teeth and held on. His legs trembled as he slowly straightened his body. What's the matter? You're starting to have a backbone now? It's too late." Su Morong kicked him again. This time, she kicked the back of his leg. She was wearing leather boots and they were tough and hard. When she kicked his leg, he felt a piercing pain. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead, but he still clenched his teeth and held on. After failing to subdue Fu Wei with 2 kicks, Su Morong flew into a rage out of humiliation. "I'll beat you to death, you little bastard." She punched and kicked him to vent her anger. Fu Wei was beaten black and blue by her, but he still refused to admit defeat. His stubborn and hateful gaze almost burned a hole in her body. At this moment, Xiaoling was only 2 meters away from them. She shouted angrily, "Su Morong, stop." Su Morong slowly retracted her hand and turned to look at the ashen-faced Xiaoling. Her eyes were filled with hatred as she said coldly, "Xiaoling, since you and your son are so close, I'll fulfill your wish and let you go to the netherworld together." When Snake Boy heard this, he panicked. They had been bribed by Su Morong. She had said that she would not take Wei and Xiaoling's lives. They did not expect her to change her mind. He stammered, "Madam, this killing people isn't good, right?" Su Morong's expression turned cold. Her gaze was like a sharp knife that pierced Snake Boy. Monkey hurriedly covered his mouth and laughed. "Madam, my friend is just joking. Since it's a deal, you can do whatever you want with them since they're in your hands." Su Morong's expression softened, and the killing intent in her eyes dissipated. She turned to look at Xiao. "Xiao, give them the other check." Monkey took the check from Xiao and quickly checked it before stuffing it into his pocket. Su Morong stared at him and Snake Boy and said coldly, "I've always believed that the dead are the ones who keep secrets the best. However, I'm also a person of my word. Since the deal is done, we're strangers. I believe you know what to do." Monkey pressed Snake Boy's head and both of them nodded. He laughed and said, Of course. After we leave this place, we won't remember anything." Su Morong looked at them deeply and finally ordered, "Ameng, give them a boat." Snake Boy's eyes moved. He wanted to say something, but Monkey had already pulled him away quickly, ignoring Fu Wei's desperate and angry gaze. A fishing boat slowly sailed away. The sea breeze carried a fishy smell. It was silent all around. Su Morong glanced at Xiaoling and Fu Wei and smiled coldly. "Now that there's only the few of us left, I'll let you and your son know what it means to regret being human." Xiaoling glared at her angrily. Why? Why are you doing this to us?" Su Morong shrugged, her beautiful face cold. "It's simple. You're Xiaodong's closest people. If I kill you, she'll feel worse than death." Xiaoling's eyes were fierce and she wanted to pounce on her and bite her throat. "Su Morong, you be *t. More than 20 years ago, you stole my husband and wanted to burn me to death. Even if I die in your hands today and become a malicious spirit, I won't let you off." Su Morong laughed wildly. After a while, she stopped laughing and walked slowly to Xiaoling. She stretched out her slender fingers and pinched Xiaoling's chin tightly. Her lips curled into a sinister smile. "You're not stupid after all. You know that I deliberately arranged the fire. It's a pity that I let you live for another 20 years. Why? You already have Xia Zhensheng. Why do you still want to harm me? I'm not a threat to you at all." Su Morong's fingers tightened and pinched Xiaoling's chin. She sneered. "If you want to blame someone, blame that useless man Xia Zhensheng. Since we're already divorced, he still comes running to you every other day. Does he think I'm an idiot? Even if I don't love him, I can't tolerate my man thinking about another woman." Her fingers pinched Xiaoling so hard that she had difficulty breathing. Her face was pale as she said hatefully, "Since you don't love him, why do you want to destroy our family?" Su Morong leaned close to her ear and laughed eerily. "Since you're going to die anyway, I don't mind telling you this secret. Because I'm pregnant before marriage, I need to find a sucker. An honest man like Xia Zhenxing is just right." Xiaoling was shocked. "Su Xingchen isn't Xia Zhenxing's child?" Su Morong laughed mockingly. "Of course not. How could I give birth to that useless man's child?" After saying that, she suddenly flung Xiaoling's chin away. Because she used a lot of strength, Xiaoling fell and lay on the beach pathetically. She shouted hysterically, "Su Morong, you're too heartless. There's something even more heartless. You and your son will see it soon." Su Morong smiled and clapped her hands. "Old Xiao, Ameng, bring the two of them to the beach. Xiao, bring that thing over. Add. Xingwu 799. Chapter 357. On the clear seaside. The sound of the waves crashing against the sand could be heard. Xiaoling and Fu Wei were escorted to the seaside, less than 20 centimeters away from the water. Su Morong's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Old Xiao, tear off the tape on that little bastard's mouth." It would be a pity if she couldn't hear his screams later. She looked at the ropes on their legs and said, "Untie the ropes on your legs as well." This island was extremely desolate and there were only a few of them. Xiaoling and her son would not be able to escape from their clutches. With the ropes on their legs untied, the scene of their struggle became even more exciting. After the tape on Fu Wei's mouth was removed, the first thing he said was, "Mom, I'm sorry. It's all my fault." Xiaoling sighed. "Don't say it, Wei. I don't blame you." "No, Mom, I want to say it. I'm afraid that if I don't say it now, I won't have the chance anymore." Fu Wei's eyes were red as he choked out. "It's all my fault. In order to pay off my gambling debts, I came up with a rotten idea with my friends. I pretended to be kidnapped by them, and then received the ransom. I didn't expect that they would betray me. Mom, I've implicated you. I'm really sorry." Xiaoling shook her head. Just as she was about to speak, Su Morong suddenly laughed out loud. "Fu Wei, oh Fu Wei, you really have a pig's brain. Let me tell you, this was all a trap set by me." Fu Wei's eyes widened in disbelief. After a while he reacted. "You mean, Chang and the others were already bribed by you and deliberately instigated me to carry out this kidnapping?" Su Morong sneered. "Not only that, I also bribed your potential customers to not buy your software, and forced you into a dead end. You woman, you're too despicable." Fu Wei angrily rushed towards Su Morong. Unfortunately, before he could get close to her body, he was already knocked to the ground by old Xiao. The skin on his lips was broken and fresh blood flowed out. Axiu carried an iron bucket and jumped down from the cabin of the fishing boat. She placed the iron bucket on the beach and saw that there was an iron cover on top of it. It seemed like there was some ferocious animal inside as it banged against the walls of the bucket. Su Morong raised her eyebrows, her eyes cold. "Xiao, open it." Axiu nodded and carefully lifted the lid. Xiaoling and Fu Wei couldn't help but look over. There were dozens of flat fish in the iron bucket, each about 10 centimeters long. Their backs were dark green, and their bellies were bright red. It seemed that they had been cooped up in the iron bucket for too long. Once they were able to breathe fresh air, they immediately flipped over, splashing water everywhere. There were also a few fish that jumped out of the barrel and rolled back into the barrel. In those few seconds, everyone noticed that their teeth were as sharp as saws. Xiaoling and Fu Wei looked at each other. They didn't know why Su Morong had asked someone to bring a bucket of fish over. Su Morong raised her eyebrows and said calmly, "These fish are called piranhas. Their teeth are unusually sharp. It's said that they can bite off 16 cubic centimeters of meat in one bite. With this bucket of fish, you'll be reduced to bones in less than half an hour." Fu Wei trembled, his eyes filled with fear as he stared at the piranhas in the bucket. Xiaoling's eyes narrowed. If one looked closely, they would notice that her gaze was calm and rational. It was completely different from the gaze of a loving mother who was worried about her son. However, Su Morong didn't notice any of this. She was still gloating over the piranhas. "I specially prepared this for you and your son. Once you've become a pile of bones and rot in this desolate place, no one will ever find you." She glanced at Old Owl and Ameng and ordered, "Pour the piranhas into the sea, then throw them both in." Old Owl nodded. He lifted the metal bucket and took 2 steps back, away from the water. Then he slowly tipped the bucket and poured all the piranhas into the water. After the piranhas entered the water, they didn't swim away immediately. Instead, they circled around in the shallow water, as if waiting for something. Old Owl was prepared. He took out a dagger and cut his finger. He squeezed 2 drops of blood onto the water. The smell of blood spread in the water. The piranhas seemed to have gone crazy. They rolled, flopped, and hissed at each other. He did this to lure the piranhas to stay where they were with his blood. "All right, it's your turn now." Ameng carried Xiaoling with one hand and grabbed Fu Wei with the other. He pushed them into the water. Fu Wei shouted, "Hold on." Su Morong made a gesture and Ameng paused. Su Morong said coldly, "Do you have any last words?" Fu Wei said anxiously, "Let my mother go." Su Morong crossed her arms and said calmly, "Impossible." Ameng continue. Ameng lifted Xiaoling first and pushed her into the water. Seeing that her body was getting closer and closer to the water, the piranhas seemed to have smelled the scent of humans. They turned restlessly and a few fish jumped out of the water. They opened their mouths and bit her cheeks with their sharp teeth. "No!" Fu Wei screamed. He was so scared that he almost fell to the ground. His legs trembled as he shouted, "Please let my mother go." In the blink of an eye, Xiaoling threw her head back and slammed it into Ameng's nose. Her wrists tightened and the rope broke with a bang. She quickly grabbed Ameng's hand that was on her shoulder and threw him over her shoulder into the sea. All of this happened too quickly. It only took a few seconds. When old Xiao and Xiao reacted and wanted to help Ameng, the school of piranhas had already bitten his body. "Ah!" Ameng's shrill screams filled the air. Once the piranhas had their prey, they would not let go even if they were beaten to death. They would move their bodies to tear the bloody flesh off and change their teeth so that they could continue to hunt for food. Their strong teeth immediately caused a very serious bite. Pieces of bloody flesh were torn from Ameng's legs and body. Blood stained the water red. "Help! Ah!" Ameng flopped in the water and screamed miserably. Old Xiao and Xiao each stood on one side and grabbed his arm. They pulled him out of the water. There were dozens of piranhas biting his flesh tightly, unwilling to let go. His clothes were torn to shreds and his legs were badly mangled, revealing his white bones. Just as they were trying to save Ameng, Xiaoling had already dragged Fu Wei, whose legs had turned to jelly, to a place far away from the water. She quickly untied the rope around his wrists. Su Murong glared at them angrily. You're not Xiaoling. Who are you? That's right, this woman was not Xiaoling. Xiaoling could not be so skilled. It was even more impossible for her right leg to recover in an instant and pull Fu Wei along for dozens of meters. Old Xiao and Ashio were still helping Meng deal with the piranhas. A helicopter rumbled as it flew into everyone's line of sight. The sniper on the helicopter carried a submachine gun and aimed at Su Murong and the others. There was also a speedboat cutting across the calm sea and rushing over. There was also a sniper on the speedboat aiming at them with a submachine gun. Their rescue team had arrived. Xiaoling, oh no, it should be Leng Shui who was pretending to be Xiaoling. She calmly stroked her hair and said calmly, You don't deserve to know my name. Damn it, I've been fooled. Su Murong quickly took out a pistol from her handbag and aimed at Leng Shui and Fu Wei. Get the helicopter and speedboat to leave. Otherwise, I'll take your lives immediately. On the other side, Old Xiao and Ashio had already abandoned Meng. They each took out a pistol from their arms and aimed at Leng Shui and Leng Shui. After the extreme panic, Fu Wei had experienced a bizarre role change. His mind was still in a mess and he did not know what to do. He only knew to follow closely behind Leng Shui. Leng Shui pulled him behind her and stared at Su Murong. She said coldly, Su Murong, you're at the end of your rope. I advise you to put down your weapon and surrender. Don't even think about it. Old Xiao Ashio, quick, shoot and kill them. Su Murong screamed and pulled the trigger at the same time. Bang bang. After a few gunshots, Old Xiao and Ashio fell to the ground. They were shot from the back by the snipers on the speedboat. The pistol in Su Murong's hand was knocked out of her hand by the snipers on the helicopter. The helicopter landed on the beach with a loud roar. The people on the speedboat also quickly jumped onto the beach. They were actually a group of policemen in uniform. In just a few seconds, Su Murong was already subdued by the police and handcuffed. She was like a defeated rooster, losing all her arrogance. Old Xiao and Ashio had already been shot dead. They lay on the beach with blood gushing out, and did not move at all. Although the piranha on Meng's body had been dealt with, a lot of its flesh and blood had been devoured. White bones could be seen in many parts of its body, and it had already fainted. Bailey Han was the first to jump down from the helicopter. He then helped the real Xiaoling and Fu Qinghai down. Dad, Mom. Fu Wei was so guilty that he quickly threw himself into their arms and burst into tears. Dad, Mom, I was wrong. I won't mess around anymore. I'm sorry. Xiaoling and her husband hugged Fu Wei and could not help but wipe their tears. Leng Shui walked up to Bailey Han, took out a recording pen from her pocket and said, Young master, this is the recording of Su Murong's confession. Very good. Thank you for your hard work. Bailey Han took the recording pen. Officer Li, who was leading the team, ordered his subordinates to take Su Murong onto the speedboat. Then he ordered a bomb to be dropped in the shallow water where the piranha were. All the piranha were killed by the explosion to prevent them from destroying the ecological balance of the water. Before Officer Li left, he greeted Bailey Han. Bailey Han gave him the recording pen to use as evidence against Su Murong. Xiaoling and her husband thanked Leng Shui profusely for saving their son's life. Leng Shui smiled and said, You're welcome. This is my job. Ad Hongcha 866. Chapter 358. It turned out that when Snake Boy called Xiaoling to inform her of the address to deliver the ransom, his phone signal was tracked by Bailey Han's men. Bao chased him downstairs and found him suspicious. He followed him all the way and eavesdropped on his conversation with Monkey. He learned that there was another mastermind behind the kidnapping. On the other side, Bailey Han asked Leng Shui to disguise herself as Xiaoling and deliver the ransom on her behalf. Leng Shui pretended to cooperate with the kidnappers and hid a tracking device in her shoes. While tracking Leng Shui's coordinates, Bailey Han asked the police for help to bring the mastermind behind the kidnapping to justice. As for Monkey and the other two, they could not escape the punishment of the law. This was a battle that was won beautifully. After this incident, Fu Wei realized that people in the underworld were sinister. On the surface, people called him brothers, but in reality, They would not hesitate to betray him for their own benefits. He completely cut off contact with his bad friends and decided to turn over a new leaf. That night, the family celebrated at Xiaoling's house. As Fu Wei's savior, Leng Shui was also invited. It was not the first time that she had eaten with Xiaodong's family, but this time she felt a little uncomfortable because everyone treated her as a hero and was extremely enthusiastic about her. Fu Wei even solemnly toasted her to thank her for saving his life. After that, he toasted Bai Lihan and Xiaodong. He raised his glass with both hands and said sincerely, "Sister, brother-in-law, the people I want to thank the most are you two. When I was at my worst, you didn't abandon me. You introduced me to jobs and helped me change my image. This time, you even saved my life. I swear, I will be a good person in the future and will not let you down." Xiaodong was so happy and excited that she momentarily forgot that she couldn't drink. Just as she raised her wine glass, Bai Lihan had already pressed down on her hand. He smiled and said, "Away, we are all very happy that you can understand. Your sister can't drink, so I will drink on her behalf." He raised his head and drank the wine in his glass. Then he raised Xiaodong's glass and slowly drank it. Xiaodong quickly picked up some food with her chopsticks and fed it to him. In the end, Fu Wei poured a drink for Fu Qinghai and Xiaoling. Before he said anything, his eyes were already filled with tears. Seeing the tenderness in his parents' eyes, his heart was filled with guilt. "Dad, Mom, your son is unfilial. I have made you worry for so many years. I am really sorry. I will not do anything stupid in the future. I will not let you down." Fu Qinghai and Xiaoling were also teary-eyed. They thought that they would not see the day their son became sensible. They did not expect him to wake up. They were so excited that they kept praising him. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, the whole family was joyous and harmonious. Fu Wei looked around at his family members. His eyes flickered as if he had something to say, but was too embarrassed to say it. Bai Lihan's eyes were sharp and he was the first to notice his abnormality. The corners of his lips curled up as he said, "Oh Wei, do you have something to say to us?" Fu Wei coughed and blushed. "Brother-in-law, I have an idea that I want to discuss with you." "Okay, go ahead." Bai Lihan's expression was gentle. He moved his lips and clenched his fists. He made up his mind and said, "Dad, Mom, sis, brother-in-law, I want to go back to school." He lowered his head uneasily. He did not dare to look at everyone's expression. Bai Lihan sat next to him. He reached out and patted him on the shoulder. "This is a good thing. As long as you make up your mind, we will support you." Fu Wei suddenly looked up. He looked around in disbelief and found that his family was looking at him with smiles. Obviously, they agreed with his suggestion. Fu Qinghai said happily, "Wei, don't worry and go back to school. Your mom and I still have some savings. It is enough to pay off our gambling debts." Fu Wei said seriously, "Dad, Mom, thank you for supporting me. However, I want to pay off my gambling debts myself. I want to work for the next 2 months and use my own hands to make up for the mess I made." Good. As expected of my son. You have learned how to be responsible. Very good." Fu Qinghai was so excited that he could not control himself. The whole family was immersed in high spirits. On the other side, the Su family was shrouded in a gloomy fog. Su Xingchen could not believe that her mother was arrested. Since she was young, her mother was like a goddess in her eyes. She was so perfect that no one could blaspheme her. How could she fall into the hands of Bai Lihan and be arrested by the police? She was angry and could not believe it. She vented all her anger on the items in the room. She broke the computer, smashed the mirror and vase, and roared loudly. Xia Zhenqing still didn't know that Su Xingchen wasn't his biological daughter. Although he had many complaints towards his wife, towards Su Xingchen, he still doted on her like a loving father. When she was angry, he clearly knew that he would be scolded by her, but he still walked into her room. The room was a mess. Su Xingchen was like a crazy woman. Her hair was disheveled. She held her head with both hands and screamed. Xia Zhenqing approached her and said softly, "Xingchen, don't be like this. I don't want you to care." Before he could finish his words, Su Xingchen suddenly pushed him away. She stared at him with resentment. "It's all your fault. You're too useless. If it was my godfather, he would definitely think of a way to save mommy. How could I have a father like you? Her words were like a sharp knife, ruthlessly stabbing into Xia Zhenxing's heart. Blood flowed out. His face was pale, like a fallen leaf in the autumn wind, lonely and miserable. His expression was sluggish. His body was stiff for nearly a minute. Finally, he comforted himself. His daughter only suffered a blow and was emotionally unstable. He should not be so calculative. His lips moved with difficulty and said, "Xing Chen, I will hire the best lawyer for your mommy. Now you should eat something first. Don't starve." "I'm not hungry. Get out. I don't want to talk to you." Su Xingchen pointed at the door and hysterically shouted, "A useless man like you is not fit to be my father." Xia Zhenxing's legs felt like they were filled with lead. He held his heart that was full of holes and walked out of her room step by step. Everything happened too suddenly. Other than knowing that Su Morong was suspected of kidnapping Fu Wei and was charged with intentional homicide, he did not know the details of the situation. He slumped against the back of the sofa and held his forehead with one hand. In an instant, he looked like he had aged 10 years. The next day, Xia Zhenxing went to the detention center. He wanted to meet with Su Morong, but Su Morong refused to meet with him. Later, he went to the police station and requested to meet with Captain Li, who arrested Su Morong. He tried to get more details of the case from him. Captain Li did not hide anything. He roughly described the situation. In the end, he vaguely mentioned the contents of the recording pen, including Su Morong's order to set the fire and her pregnancy before marriage. Finally, he said, "Although we have concrete evidence, Su Morong did not plead guilty." Xia Zhenxing could no longer hear what he said in the end. His mind was filled with thoughts of Su Morong setting the fire, and the fact that Su Xingchen was not his biological daughter. He did not know how he walked out of the police station. His head was heavy and his feet were light. His ears were filled with ear-piercing mocking laughter. He was like a walking corpse. Unknowingly, he walked to the road. A car roared and sped over. A hand pulled him over. "Uncle? Are you okay? Old man, do you want to die?" He could not hear the concerned questions of the passers-by and the angry curses of the driver. His vision turned black, and his legs gave way. He fell to the ground with a plop. It was already late at night. Xia Ling did not expect to be woken up by Xia Zhenxing's call at this time. His voice sounded tired and weary. "Aling, I'm very sorry. I didn't know Su Morong had done so many terrible things." Xia Ling looked at her husband who was sleeping soundly beside her. She got up from the bed and walked to the living room. "You already know?" Xia Zhenxing suddenly burst into tears. He said intermittently, I know everything. She was the one who set the fire. Aling, Xingchen is not my daughter. Tell me, why am I so stupid? I'm so useless." Yesterday, when they returned from the deserted island, Leng Shui had already told them everything about how she had induced Su Morong to confess to the crime. Therefore, Xia Ling already knew that Xia Zhenxing was not lying. It was indeed Su Morong who had forced him to marry her. The hatred in her heart for Xia Zhenxing dissipated a little. Hearing how sad he was, Xia Ling felt a little conflicted. She hesitated for a moment and said, "It's not that you're useless. It's just that Su Morong is too cunning. I'm sorry. I've let you and Xia down. I've failed my whole life. Aling, if there's an afterlife, I want to be your husband again. I will never betray you again. I want to be with you for the rest of my life and grow old together." Xia Zhenxing's heart-wrenching cries traveled to Xia Ling's ears through the phone. She suddenly panicked as if something bad was about to happen. She asked anxiously, "Xia Zhenxing, where are you right now?" "On the roof of the hospital." "Aling, help me tell Xia that I'm not a good father. I've let her down." Xia Ling's pupils shrank. Her face was filled with horror. Even her voice changed. "You, what are you doing on the roof of the hospital? Don't do anything stupid." He began to sob again. "I don't have the face to live anymore. Aling, I'll find you in my next life." "Xia Zhenxing," Xia Ling shouted. "You haven't paid back what you owe me and Xia. Don't you think it's too easy for you to die now?" I know. That's why I'll pay you back in my next life." "Shut up. You've already harmed us for our entire lives. Do you want to harm us in our next lives? If you're really sorry, come to my house right now and beg for my forgiveness. I can't do it, Aling. Let's meet again in our next lives. Attention, Xingwu 799. Chapter 359. Xia Zhenqing's voice was filled with despair and disgust for this world. Xia Ling wanted to rush to his side immediately to stop him from committing suicide. She yelled anxiously and painfully, Xia Zhenqing, I'm begging you. Don't do anything stupid. Do you know why I survived when I was so badly burned? It was because I had faith in myself. I was worried about Xia Xia. You've only suffered a small blow now. Why don't you turn around and look? Xia Xia and I are still here. Her voice was choked with sobs. She gritted her teeth and said clearly, Xia Zhenqing, I forgive you. I really forgive you. Xia Xia has forgiven you too. Don't be impulsive and don't do anything stupid. Let Xia Xia call you dad again, okay? The person on the other end of the phone did not make a sound. Only the sound of suppressed sobs could be heard. Xia Ling softened her voice and said, Zhenqing, our family has been separated for too long. Let's sit together and untie each other. No matter what happened in the past, we will always be a family. The sobs on the other end of the phone turned into loud cries. The sound of heartbreak made Xia Ling's tears fall like rain. She choked and said, Zhenqing, actually, when I found out the truth, I didn't hate you anymore. You know, I'm just a softie at heart. I couldn't bring myself to tell you. Actually, I'm very grateful to you. You sacrificed a lot to protect Xia Xia and me. Zhenqing, even if the whole world abandoned you, even if the whole world let you down, you still have Xia Xia and me. Although I'm no longer your wife, I'm still your family. Do you have the heart to abandon us again? Do you have the heart to abandon your cute little grandson? The sobs gradually subsided, and his emotions seemed to have stabilized. Xia Ling asked softly, Zhenqing, which hospital are you in now? I want to see you. Xia Zhenqing was silent for a long time. Central Hospital. Okay, wait for me there. I'll be right there. When Xia Ling ended the call, she realized that Fu Qinghai had already woken up and was standing at the door of the living room. She quickly explained, Old Fu, it was Xia Zhenqing who called. I was afraid that he would do something stupid, so... I understand, you don't have to explain. Fu Qinghai walked towards her, his expression as usual, not revealing the slightest bit of displeasure. Do you want me to accompany you? Xia Ling thought for a moment and said, No need, I'll go alone. He's just calmed down and I'm afraid I'll agitate him. Fu Qinghai said, I'd better go with you. It's so late and I'm worried. I'll wait downstairs later. You can go up and meet him. Xia Ling did not refuse. The couple took the elevator and went downstairs. It was not easy for them to hail a taxi. The couple got into the car and Xia Ling said gratefully, Old Fu, thank you. Fu Qinghai grinned. We've been married for so long, what's the point of saying so much? The two rushed to the hospital. Fu Qinghai was waiting in the hospital lobby, while Xia Ling took the elevator upstairs alone. When she reached the top floor of the hospital, it was pitch black and nothing could be seen. Xia Ling took out her phone and used the weak light to illuminate the area. She looked around for traces of Xia Zhenqing. Finally, she saw a figure near the railing. She called his name and walked in his direction. When she got closer, she realized that Xia Zhenqing was sitting on the ground with his hands hugging his knees. His head was buried in his legs and he reeked of alcohol. There were a few empty beer cans beside him. Zhenqing. Xia Ling bent down and pushed his shoulder. He remained in that position, motionless. Xia Ling pushed him hard. Zhenqing, wake up. Don't sleep here, you'll get sick. This time it worked. He moved his body and slowly raised his head. His eyes were hazy as he looked at the woman squatting in front of him. He called out in a muffled voice, Aling. It's me. He suddenly pulled her into his arms and hugged her tightly. Aling, I missed you so much. I missed you so much. He murmured. Don't be like this. Zhenqing, let go of me. Xia Ling was embarrassed. Fortunately, it was night and Fu Qinghai did not follow her upstairs. Otherwise, she would have been embarrassed. Aling, I missed you. He was strangely strong. He hugged her so tightly that she could not break free. Xia Ling was angry and anxious. She said in a heavier tone, "Zhenxing, don't be like this. Let go of me. If you don't, I'll be angry." Don't be angry, don't be angry." He murmured and let go of her. He sobbed softly. "Ah Ling, don't be angry." Xia Ling sighed and coaxed him like she was coaxing a child. Okay, I'm not angry anymore. Get up quickly. I'll take you back to the ward." She noticed that he was wearing a hospital gown. This time, he didn't mess around and slowly stood up with her help. A drunk person and a person with weak legs made it difficult for the two of them to move. When she helped him to the door of the corridor, Xia Ling was so tired that she was panting. She looked at the stairs in front of her. If he accidentally fell, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, she decided to call Fu Qinghai up to help. When he received Xia Ling's call, Fu Qinghai did not say anything and hurried upstairs to help her. Fu Qinghai helped Xia Zhenxing down the stairs. When they reached the elevator, Xia Ling asked the drunk Xia Zhenxing, "Zhenxing, which ward are you in?" Xia Zhenxing said in a muffled voice, "Ward 703. After the couple sent him back to the ward, they were worried that he would run up to the roof again. After some discussion, Fu Qinghai stayed behind to take care of him while Xia Ling stayed in a hotel near the hospital for the night. Xia Zhenxing slept until 8 in the morning. When he opened his eyes, he stared blankly at the white ceiling. After thinking for a long time, he remembered that he seemed to have fainted on the side of the road yesterday, and was sent to the hospital by a kind person. Then he climbed up to the top floor and drank a lot. He gave Xia Ling a call. Because of the hangover, his head still hurt a little. He rubbed his forehead and sat up in bed, still a little confused as to why he was lying on a hospital bed. The door to the ward opened. He instinctively turned his head to look and was instantly stunned. What did he see? Standing at the door was Xia Dong. She ran to his bedside and threw herself into his arms with tears streaming down her face. Dad, I'm sorry. Xia Zhenxing could not believe his eyes. He mumbled, "Am I dreaming? Are you really Xia?" Xia Dong cried even harder. "Dad, it's really me. I've wronged you. Don't leave me and Mom." Early in the morning, her mother had called her and told her that her father had almost jumped off a building to commit suicide. She was so anxious that she rushed to the hospital as fast as she could. On the way to the hospital, she kept blaming herself. If she had taken the initiative to contact her father when she found out the truth and told him her true thoughts, perhaps he would not have tried to commit suicide. Xia Zhenxing's tears streamed down his face. He hugged her tightly in his arms and choked out, Xia, are you willing to forgive me?" Xia Dong said with tears streaming down her face, "Dad, I've forgiven you a long time ago. I know that it's all Su Morong's fault. You sacrificed a lot to protect Mom and me. Dad, I'm so ashamed. I shouldn't have treated you like that in the past. Are you willing to forgive me for being immature?" Xia Zhenxing stroked her hair and whispered, "Silly girl, Dad has never blamed you." "Dad." This affectionate call made Xia Zhenxing's tears fall like rain. He had waited for more than 20 years. Finally, he could be reunited with his daughter. After they had calmed down, Bailey Han and Xia Ling, who had been waiting outside, entered the ward. The knot in his heart for more than 20 years was finally untied. Xia Zhenxing also had the courage to live on. His body was fine, and he was soon discharged from the hospital. After he was discharged, the first thing he did was to submit the divorce agreement to Su Morong through his lawyer. As for Su Xingchen, after all, he had raised him for more than 20 years. He still had feelings for him. However, after Su Xingchen found out the truth, he did not want to acknowledge him as his father. He did not force him and packed his belongings. He did not take a single cent from the Su family and moved out of the Su family's villa. The Academy of Fine Arts had once assigned him a staff dormitory. He lived there temporarily and planned to find a more suitable house before moving. After Bailey Han found out about this, he bought a comfortable and well-furnished apartment near the school and asked Xia Dong to send him the key. Without Su Morong's interference, Fu Wei quickly closed his first business deal with unyielding perseverance. He became more and more mature, more and more modest. He gained the approval of the leaders and customers, and his work became more and more smooth. Bailey Han hired the best lawyer and vowed to fight Su Morong to the end. He wanted her to pay for what she had done. After the first trial, Su Morong was convicted of intentional injury, intentional homicide, kidnapping, and several other crimes. She was sentenced to life imprisonment. Su Morong did not agree with the first trial's verdict and filed an appeal. Because the Su Morong's family was very famous in a city, the case of Su Morong attracted widespread attention from the whole society. There was also one person who had been paying attention to the trial's result. He was Shen Ran, Su Morong's agent. When he learned that Su Morong had offended Bailey Han, and that she was about to collapse, Shen Ran set off fireworks at the seaside for an hour to celebrate. Before the second trial began, Bailey Han received a strange phone call. "Mr. Bailey, my name is Shen Ran. You don't know me, but I know you. I'm very grateful to you for bringing down Su Morong. In order to express my gratitude, I specially want to give you a gift." Shen Ran paused and said, "Fonglin Villa is Su Morong's villa in the suburbs. You will find something very interesting there." Bailey Han's eyes moved slightly and he said lightly, "Why should I believe you?" Shen Ran sneered. "As long as you go to that place, you will understand. Believe me, don't go alone, because that place is full of bodyguards and traps." Bailey Han said calmly, "Condition?" He never believed that there was a free lunch in this world. Beauty novel Hongcha 866. Chapter 360. Shen Ran chuckled. "You're indeed a smart person. My only condition is that Su Morong is sentenced to death. A vicious woman like her shouldn't be allowed to pollute the air anymore." Bailey Han said calmly, "Deal." Bailey Han was dubious about Shen Ran's words. He wouldn't easily believe a stranger's words. He had sent Ah Bao and Ahu to Maplewood's villa to gather information. Both of them were the best fighters in the Dragon Gang, but he didn't expect them to return with injuries. Ah Bao's arm was injured, and his black suit was stained with blood. Ahu's calf was fractured. According to them, there were at least 10 bodyguards in the villa. After they sneaked into the villa, they avoided the bodyguards' line of sight and split up. Ah Bao found the location of the basement and planned to enter to investigate, while Ahu searched the rooms above ground. In the end, before Ah Bao could enter the basement, he was discovered by the Tibetan Mastiff guarding the door. The ferocious Tibetan Mastiff pounced on him and scratched his arm. Ahu also accidentally triggered the alarm and attracted the bodyguard's attention. During the fight, he fractured his calf. The two of them lowered their heads in shame and said, "Young master, we failed to complete the mission. Please punish us." Bailey Han's expression was calm. "Although you didn't complete the mission, you managed to gather important information. Go back and recuperate." "Thank you, young master." The two of them left after they finished speaking. Bailey Han's slender fingers tapped lightly on the table. He concluded that there must be some unspeakable secret hidden in Maplewood's villa. Otherwise, Su Morong wouldn't be so cautious. She would go to jail and still let the bodyguards guard the villa. Xia Dong walked into the study with a cup of hot tea. Seeing him deep in thought, she didn't disturb him and gently placed the teacup on the table. He pulled her into his arms and wrapped his arms around her waist. His chin rested on her neck. She rubbed against his chest and said softly, "Hubby, what were you thinking about just now?" Bailey Han hugged her tightly and said in a low voice, "Ahu and Abeo came back with some minor injuries. I'm sure that Maplewood's villa is hiding an unspeakable secret." Xia Dong thought for a moment and said, "Ahu and Abeo are so powerful, yet they are injured. It seems that Maplewood's villa is really a dangerous place. Why don't we leave this matter to the police?" Bailey Han shook his head. "The police don't have a search warrant. They can't break into private houses without permission." Xia Dong laughed. "Then wouldn't it be a crime for you to break in?" He raised his eyebrows and said, "Honey, since Su Morong has hidden something in there, I'm sure she won't dare to make a fuss even if it's invaded. As long as no one dies, I have a way to make it public without anyone noticing that I'm the one who did it." "All right, it seems that I can't change your mind." She hooked her arms around his neck and looked at him with sparkling eyes. "But you have to promise me that you won't take any risks." "Absolutely not. I already have a plan." He lowered his head and pecked her seductive red lips. She licked the corner of his lips playfully. What plan? He bit her earlobe and said a few words softly. Hubby, you're a genius. She laughed softly and kissed him on the lips as a reward. Although Ahu and Abeo had failed to gather information, they had drawn a map of the villa's rooms and marked out the locations of some of the hidden mechanisms. Since the bodyguards were guarding the villa and didn't allow anyone to break in, he would find a way to force them out. 2 days later, late at night, Bailey Han sent out 3 elites from the Dragon Gang to carry out a mission. These 3 people were Old Wu, Crow, and Gang Z. Crow used special equipment to interfere with the surveillance equipment outside the villa, allowing his companions to successfully sneak into the villa. After that, they set a fire in the villa's kitchen, which triggered the fire alarm and alerted all the bodyguards. While they were trying to put out the fire, the garage and warehouse caught fire again. Another group of people were sent to put out the fire. Now was the time when the security was at its weakest. Crow stayed outside the villa to keep a lookout while the other 2 entered the basement with tranquilizer guns. The Tibetan Mastiff that had attacked Abeo was put down by more than 10 tranquilizer guns as soon as it got up. After passing by the sturdy Tibetan Mastiff, the 2 encountered another guard, who was also put down by them with tranquilizer guns. They walked step by step to the deepest part of the basement. This place was like a prison, and the air was filled with an unpleasant smell. There were 5 secret rooms in the corridor, and each room had a thick and heavy iron door. There was a big iron lock on the door, and there was a very small vent above the iron door, which was only big enough to fit a fist in. Through the vent, they saw a scene that they would never forget. Even though they were used to seeing life and death and torture, they were still shocked by the scene in the secret room. After a brief moment of shock, the 2 immediately took out their cameras and took pictures of what was in the secret room. Old Wu quickly reported the situation to Bailey Han. Young master, there are 4 men imprisoned in the basement. What should we do now? Bailey Han frowned slightly. If Old Wu and the others left now, when the bodyguards found out that the secret of the basement had been exposed, they would very likely kill the 4 men in the basement to cover up the crime. The thought flashed through his mind, and he immediately made a decision. Save them, Old Wu said in a low voice. There is a large iron lock on the iron door, and we haven't found the key yet. More importantly, the 4 men have lost their ability to move. It will be difficult for us to get out with them. Bailey Han frowned. When will the fire alarm arrive? Before we entered the villa, we already called the fire alarm. They should be here soon. Then we'll follow the original plan and delay until the fire alarm arrives. Then we'll lead them to discover the secret of the secret room. This was Bailey Han's plan. He deliberately set the villa on fire to divert the bodyguards' attention, and the 3 members of the Dragon Gang would take the opportunity to discover the secret of the basement. Then they would lead the fire alarm to discover the secret and completely separate themselves from the matter. After ending the call, Old Wu said to his companion, Gongzi, you stay here and protect the 4 of them. I'll go upstairs and check out the situation. Before Old Wu had time to return to the ground, Crow, who had stayed outside as a lookout, had already sent a message through the earpiece communicator. Old Wu, the fire alarm is here. They're helping to put out the fire. Old Wu frowned slightly and immediately had a plan in mind. He quickly informed Gongzi to remove the anesthetic needles from the Tibetan Mastiff and the guards, and withdraw from the secret room. As for himself, he pulled out his pistol and fired a shot into the sky. He shouted, "Murder! Help!" The fire outside was almost extinguished. When the firemen heard the gunshots and cries for help, they divided some of their forces into the villa to investigate. The leader of the group of bodyguards quickly stopped them. "Officer, there's nothing in the villa. You don't have to go in," the captain said. "I clearly heard gunshots and cries for help just now. Something must have happened." Xiao Ding quickly informed 110. The firemen did not have guns on them. In the event of a shooting incident, they still had to ask the police for help. "Save me! Save me!" The cries for help became more and more urgent. The fire chief ignored the bodyguard's attempts to stop him, and directly led 2 firemen directly into the villa. The villa was quiet, and there was not a single person in sight. The firemen's hearts were in their throats because they did not have guns or bulletproof vests. They had no choice but to carefully investigate the situation. "Captain, there's blood here." A fireman pointed at the blood on the floor. "Follow me." The three of them followed the blood and walked down the corridor to the basement. At the entrance of the basement, they saw the unconscious Tibetan Mastiff lying on the ground and a bodyguard in a black suit. There were a few wounds on the bodyguard's fingers, and the blood had already coagulated. The blood on the floor disappeared all the way here. It seemed that the blood had flowed from his fingers. "Let's go inside and take a look." The captain continued to walk inside with the two firemen. Soon they found 5 secret rooms. Through the narrow vent, they could clearly see the scene inside the secret room. The 3 firemen were shocked at the same time. In each secret room, there was a single bed, a toilet, and a simple sink. 4 of the secret rooms had a man imprisoned in them, and the remaining secret room was empty. A man was lying naked on the dirty bed. He seemed to be paralyzed on the bed and had lost the ability to move. He ate, drank, and defecated on the bed. Next to his head, there was a bowl of rice. He could reach it as long as he stretched out his hand. His lower body was soaked in feces and urine. He did not know how long it had been since he cleaned it, so the skin below his waist had all begun to rot and maggots had even grown out. In the second secret room, the imprisoned man had lost both of his legs. From the knees to the soles of his feet, they were all cut off. His wrists were firmly tied to the head of the bed with iron chains. His long hair was like withered grass over his shoulders, and his beard had grown to his chest. It seemed that he had not washed for many years. It was impossible to see his original appearance. In the third secret room, the imprisoned man was like a wild dog. There was an iron chain around his neck. He squatted on the ground naked. His hands were on the ground as he barked at the empty room. He seemed to have forgotten that he was a human. Even when he peed, he lifted one of his legs and washed the bedpost with a warm current. On the floor, his feces were everywhere. In the fourth secret room, the man looked much more normal than the other 3. He was wearing a white robe and his face was clean. It was the face of an extremely beautiful young man. He sat cross-legged on the ground and hugged something white in his hands. However, when the firefighters saw what he was hugging, all the hair on their bodies stood on end. That round thing was actually a human skull. The skull's eye sockets and nose were hollow. Its mouth was clean and beautiful. The young man treated the skull as if it was his lover. He carefully wiped the skull and softly hummed a folk song. This scene was like the perfect combination of evil and innocence. It made one's hair stand on end. Soon the police rushed over. Not only that, even the reporters rushed over after hearing the news. However, the police did not know how they got the news. In fact, it was old Wu who, under Bailey Han's instructions, secretly took photos of the secret room and sent them to all the major newspapers and media outlets. When the police carried out the 4 men imprisoned in the secret room on stretchers, the reporters rushed over like crazy. They did not care about the pungent stench and kept pressing the shutters of their cameras. They fought to be the first to report on this shocking illegal detention. The next morning, Xiaodong also saw the reports and the hair-raising pictures. The disgusting and cruel pictures almost made her vomit. She endured the great discomfort and looked at all the pictures. Finally, her gaze fell on the last picture. It was a picture of a young man hugging a skull. The young man had an extremely beautiful face. Because he had not seen the sun for many years, his skin was abnormally white. His shoulder-length hair was softly draped over his shoulders, outlining his feminine beauty. His eyebrows looked somewhat familiar. Xiaodong stared at the picture for a long time. Suddenly, her body trembled and her pupils shrank. She ran to the phone in a panic and pressed a familiar number with her trembling fingers. As soon as the other party picked up, she shouted excitedly, "Brother Shin, I saw a Yuan." Mikakito was on a business trip in Japan and was in the middle of a meeting with her subordinates. When she heard this, she suddenly stood up and said with a trembling voice, "Where is he? Is he still alive?" Xiaodong nodded repeatedly. She cried and laughed at the same time. "He's alive, he's still alive. But his situation is not very good. It turns out that he was imprisoned by Su Morong." What? A storm suddenly swept through Mikakito's eyes. Her entire body released a cold and murderous aura. Everyone in the meeting room was enveloped by this cold aura, and did not even dare to breathe loudly. Xiaodong hurriedly said, "Brother Shin, don't be so agitated. I don't know the specific situation now. I'll call you when I know more. I'll go back immediately." Mikakito was eager to return home when there was suddenly news of her brother, who had been missing for more than 20 years. She was not in the mood to care about the gang's affairs. She handed over all the affairs to Jiang Dao and let him handle them. He rushed to a city with Suzaku and Lu Xing. That day, Xiaodong went to the police station accompanied by Bailey Han and learned the details. It turned out that the 4 men, including a Yuan, were imprisoned in the basement by Su Morong. The longest of them had been imprisoned for 15 years and had completely lost the ability to communicate with the outside world. The identities of the 4 men were still under investigation. The police had compared them with the missing persons in recent years, but they had not found their real names or relevant information. She couldn't get any information about the 4 people from Su Morong's bodyguards. Xiaodong stated the purpose of her visit. "Officer, this man is someone I know." She took out a Yuan's photo and pointed it to the police. "His name is Hiroshi Kitato. His mother is Chinese and his father is Japanese. He also has an older brother named Mikakito. May I ask if we can meet him now?" Beauty novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 361. The police officer in charge of the reception had already been instructed by the chief to fulfill all of Bailey Han and his wife's requests unconditionally. Therefore, he led them to the sanatorium where Hiroshi Kitato was temporarily staying. According to his introduction, the other 3 men were also staying in the sanatorium. The nurse at the sanatorium said to them, "After our examination, we found that the patient has many old scars on his body. He has been abused in the past. His mental state is not very good. He is in a self-enclosed world and refuses to communicate with the outside world." The doctors, nurses, and police all tried to communicate with Hiroshi Kitato, but they all failed. This was a room facing the sun. White curtains hung above the large windows. Half of the curtains covered the window, while the other half was open. Warm sunlight shone through the glass and poured onto the young man sitting on the floor. He was actually 28 years old, but the long period of imprisonment made him look like he was only 18 years old. He sat facing the window, his whole body bathed in the sunlight. His shoulder-length hair had been cut neatly, and his jet-black hair shone with a healthy luster under the sunlight. He was still holding the skull in his arms. His eyes were clear, but his expression was absent-minded. He was murmuring something, but unfortunately, no one could understand him. Xiaodong squatted in front of him. Looking at him like this, her heart ached. She still remembered that more than 10 years ago, her mother had died in a fire, and she had been sent to Chensi orphanage. At that time, the first friend she had made in the orphanage was Hiroshi Kitato. However, at that time, he was not Hiroshi Kitato. He had taken his mother's surname, Liang Yuan. Hiroshi Kitato and Mikakito had similar facial features. Therefore, 6 years ago, when Xiaodong first met Mikakito in Bali, she felt that he looked familiar. "A Yuan." Xiaodong hesitated for a long time before she finally called out his name. "Do you still remember me? I'm Xia." Hiroshi Kitato did not look at her. All his attention was on the skull in his arms. His fair and slender fingers slowly rubbed the skull as he murmured, "A Yuan." Her nose twitched, and tears almost fell from her eyes. He was still immersed in his own world, ignoring everything that was happening around him. The group of people stood on the lawn downstairs and looked at Hiroshi Kitato through the window. Xiaodong asked, "Why is a Yuan still holding that thing?" The nurse explained, "We tried to take the skull from him, but he was very agitated. He kicked and hit the medical staff. We had no choice but to let him keep it for the time being." The police officer's assistant to Xiaodong and the rest of the police said, "We suspected that the skulls belonged to one of the victims. But Hiroshi refused to let it. So we had to wait until he calmed down. Thank you." Xiaodong thanked them sincerely. She could not imagine how much damage it would have done to Hiroshi Kitato if they had taken the skull away by force. The skull had probably become his emotional support during those inhumane days of detention. That night, Bailey Han made a call. The phone rang 3 times before it was picked up. "Mr. Bailey, you've received my gift to you. Don't forget your promise." Bailey Han leaned on the sofa and said calmly, "I remember very clearly that Su Morong will definitely get what she deserves." Shinran chuckled. "If that's the case, why are you still looking for me? Didn't you tell me your name because you wanted me to find you? My guess is that you should be the man in the 5th secret room." Shinran paused. After a while his voice was cold. "You're right. I was like them, imprisoned in the secret room like a dog. But I was smarter than them. I abandoned my self-esteem and was willing to be her sex slave. I tried my best to please her, so I could walk out of that hell intact." Bailey Han said calmly, "I'm not interested in your past, and I won't investigate your identity. I just want to know the situation of the other 4 people, their names, personal information, and why they were imprisoned by Su Morong." Shinran was silent for a moment and said, "I can tell you, but you have to promise me that you won't reveal anything about me. I just want to start a new life." Bailey Han slowly spat out 3 words. "I promise." "Okay, I believe you," Shinran said in a deep voice. "To put it more emotionally, each of us has a history of blood and tears. The man in the 1st secret room is called Chen Zhao. He is now 37 years old, and has been imprisoned for 15 years. He is the first man Su Morong imprisoned. It is said that his eyes are similar to Su Morong's first love. He once tried to escape, but the bodyguards broke all the bones in his body. He was paralyzed on the bed like a living dead. The second man is called Shaolin. He is 35 years old and has been imprisoned for 14 years. Because his nose and mouth are similar to Su Morong's first love, he also tried to escape but failed. His legs were cut off while he was still alive. The third man is called Li Donghao. He is 30 years old and has been imprisoned for 10 years. His chin is similar to Su Morong's first love. He is very strong and has a strong personality. He refused to be Su Morong's sex slave, so she tried all kinds of ways to humiliate him, train him, and finally turned him into a dog. The fourth man is called Liang Yuan. He is the youngest among us, only 28 years old. He was imprisoned when he was 15 years old. He is different from us, not because he looks like anyone, but because he is too beautiful. He is Su Morong's favorite plaything. Bailey Han's deep black eyes were cold. "So the main reason why Su Morong imprisoned you is because you look like her lover?" Shinran smiled bleakly. "Yes, it's funny, isn't it? Because of a face, we lost the basic right to be human." Last question, what's with the skull in Liang Yuan's hand? Shinran sighed. "Actually, that's the head of the girl he likes." Bailey Han's pupils suddenly shrank. "When he was about 18 years old, Su Morong changed a younger maid to deliver food to us. Although the maid was mute, she was very beautiful. She was about the same age as a Yuan, and they gradually developed feelings for each other. She wanted to help us escape, so she used the excuse of going out to buy things. In fact, she wanted to go to the police station to report to the police, but she was discovered by the bodyguards who were secretly following her." Shinran paused. When he spoke again, his voice was already hoarse. "Su Morong killed her. She chopped off her head and threw it into a Yuan's room. It turns out that she already knew that the maid and a Yuan had feelings for each other. She wanted to use this method to take revenge on a Yuan. From then on, a Yuan's mental state became abnormal." Shinran's voice was filled with murderous intent and anger. "Su Morong is not a human at all. She's a beast." Bailey Han's eyes were deep and dark. "I'll definitely do what I promised you. Su Morong, she deserves to die." "Thank you." Other than Hiroshi Kitato, the police had not found out the identities of the other 3 people. Just when their investigation was in a deadlock, Bailey Han organized the information he learned from Shinran into a document and sent it to the police station anonymously. The police knew the names of the 3 people and accurately understood the year they went missing. After more than half a month of investigation, they finally found the family members of the 3 people. When they went missing, they were still young men in their early 20s. Now they had been tortured until they were emaciated and skinny. They no longer looked as handsome as when they were young. Their family members hugged them and cried bitterly. These families were agitated and joined forces to sue Su Morong. They repeatedly appealed in front of the media and asked for the help of public opinion. They vowed to sentence Su Morong to death. This heartless and illegal detention attracted widespread attention and aroused public anger. Some university students even hung banners outside the Su family's villa to demonstrate. In short, everyone wanted to kill Su Morong. Mika Kito saw his brother being tortured like that with his own eyes. He also resented Su Morong. He ordered his godfather, who had been abducted and sold to the black mines in Africa, to be killed. Then he applied to visit Su Morong. At this time, Su Morong was no longer as radiant as she used to be. She was like a withered rose, showing signs of old age, but still armed herself with indifference and arrogance. She looked coldly at Mika Kito across the glass and said flatly, "Mika Kito, are you here to laugh at my situation?" Su Morong, do you know that Liang Yuan, who has been imprisoned by you for 13 years, is my brother? Mika Kito's deep black eyes were like sharp swords ruthlessly stabbing into her body. Su Morong's lawyer had already mentioned this to her, so she did not show a surprised expression. She looked up indifferently. That's a pity. I should have killed him earlier. Mika Kito gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. If looks could kill, he would have died 1,000 times. He suddenly snorted and said coldly, "Didn't you imprison them because they look like Shengguan Ao? Don't you want to know where Shengguan Ao is now?" Su Morong's body trembled. Her eyes quickly landed on his face, and there was an imperceptible urgency in her voice. "His disappearance has something to do with you?" Mika Kito leaned forward, almost touching the glass, and said clearly, "He's not missing. He's dead." Su Morong's eyes suddenly widened. The calmness that she pretended to be collapsed. She twisted her fingers together and glared at him angrily. "It's you. You're the one who killed him." "No, it's not me. It's you." Mika Kito slowly leaned back and said flatly, "He wouldn't have died, but because of Ayuan he wanted to compensate you." Boom. Su Morong's head was about to explode. She shouted emotionally, "No, I don't believe it." Mika Kito curled his lips mockingly. He took out a necklace from his pocket, raised it in the air, and shook it gently. "Do you still remember this? Attention, Xingwu 799. Chapter 362. Su Morong stared at the pendant of the necklace. It was a small and exquisite key. It was the key to her private safe. She had given it to Shengguan Ao back then because the safe contained the love letters that Shengguan Ao had written to her and their photos. She wanted the two of them to keep that memory together. Mika Kito slowly took back the necklace under her pained and desperate gaze. He put it back into his pocket and said lightly, "He loved you deeply too. Until the last moment of his life, he was still calling out your name and Su Xingchen's name." "No, don't say anymore, don't say anymore." Su Morong hugged her head with both hands. She screamed and cried in the wind. Bai Tangshan stood up and looked down at her. She was like a mental patient who was beating her head and crying hysterically. His deep eyes did not have any warmth. It was so cold that it was scary. A month later, Su Morong was sentenced to death and stripped of her political rights for life. Half a month later, Su Morong was executed, ending her evil life. In the blink of an eye, it was already July and the sun was blazing. People came and went in the airport lobby. It was a scene of countless parting and reunions. Xia Dong and Bailey Han led the children to send Mika Kito and his brother off. Hiroshi Kito was wearing a white t-shirt and light blue jeans. He looked like a big boy. He hugged a white doll in his arms and stood timidly behind Mika Kito. He looked like a frightened rabbit, and quietly peeked his head out to look at Xia Dong and the others. Suzaku stood beside him with a gentle smile on her face. She comforted him gently. "Ayuan, don't be afraid. They're all your friends. They won't hurt you." Mika Kito glanced sideways at Suzaku and Hiroshi Kito. A smile appeared in his eyes. He turned to Xia Dong and said, "Ayuan is very clingy to Suzaku now." Xia Dong smiled and said gently, "Suzaku is so patient." Ayuan will definitely get better. Mikakito walked forward and suddenly opened his arms to hug her. He ignored Bailey Han's cold gaze and said softly, Xia, I'm leaving. Take care of yourself and the children. Xia Dong also hugged him and said sadly, Brother Shin, will you never come back? Mikakito stroked her hair affectionately. Silly, of course not. I just want to take Ayuan home to pay respects to my parents. I want Ayuan to recuperate in the place where we were born. We'll be back after a while. Bailey Han's vinegar jar had been knocked over long ago, and his stomach was rumbling with jealousy. He reached out and pulled Xia Dong out of Beitang Shun's arms, interrupting the two of them. He put on a fake smile and said, I wish you a safe journey. Mikakito looked at him meaningfully. Treat Xia well. Otherwise, I won't let you off. Bailey Han raised his eyebrows and smiled. Xia is my wife. I'll naturally treat her well. Uncle Shen, we'll miss you very much. Gigai, the little fat cat, ran forward and hugged Mikakito's legs. She raised her pink little face and blinked her beautiful big eyes. Uncle Shen, you have to miss us too. Okay. Mikakito picked her up and rubbed her little head with a smile. The little girl was in an advantageous position. She waved at Hiroshi Kito, who was hiding and watching curiously. She said with a smile, Uncle Shen, my name is Xiao Guai. You have to remember me. Hiroshi Kito stared at the little girl in surprise. He imitated his brother and slowly reached out his arm to stroke her soft hair. He whispered, Gigai? Xiao Guai clapped her hands and laughed happily. Uncle Shen, you're so smart. I only said it once, and you remembered my name. Hiroshi Kito's clear eyes moved. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing a shy smile. Mikakito kissed Xiao Guai's face excitedly. Gigai, you're amazing. This is the first time Ayuan has taken the initiative to talk to someone. Xiao Guai tilted her head and giggled. The sadness of parting was swept away, and everyone was immersed in joy. It was time to board the plane. Mikakito, the brothers and Suzaku walked step by step to the boarding gate under the watchful eyes of Xia Dong and the others. They began to embark on a new journey in life. Xia Dong and Bailey Han's marriage also entered a new chapter. When little Hai was 1 year old, Xia Dong returned to work at Glamour magazine as the director. Because of her unique taste and style, she was somewhat famous in the fashion industry. Although she was busy with work, she would never neglect her family because of work. In her heart, her family was the most important. She was the envy of all the women in a city. However, outsiders did not know that she also had her own troubles. Little Hai was already 2.5 years old, but she still could not speak. Back then, Xiao Bao and Xiao Guai could already make sentences freely at her age. Xia Dong thought that her drug addiction had affected little Hai, who was still in her mother's womb. She specially took her to the hospital for a full body checkup. The doctor said that Hai was very healthy. Although most children could speak at around 1.5 years old, every child had their own uniqueness. There were also some special children who could only speak at the age of 3. It was normal for them to grow up. The doctor advised parents to give their children more stimulation by talking to them and telling them stories. Thus, as long as they had time, Xia Dong and Bailey Han would hold Hai and point to the things in the room to teach her. This is the TV. This is the sofa. This is the dog. Little Cece wiggled her little body and jumped down from her parents' arms. She ran to the things that they were pointing at and touched them here and there. She had a curious look on her face and sometimes she giggled, but she was unwilling to open her mouth and learn to speak. Xia Dong was helpless. Bailey Han rubbed her hair. Wife, don't worry. Hai actually understands in her heart and can understand what we are saying. Perhaps she just doesn't want to say it. When she wants to speak, she will naturally speak. All right, then I'll be a little more patient. Xia Dong hugged his neck and rubbed against his chest. In the past, when she rubbed against him, he would take the opportunity to do something sneaky. Today he actually gently pushed her away. Xia Dong was puzzled. Thinking about it, the two of them hadn't been intimate for 5 or 6 days, which wasn't his style at all. She raised her head and kissed his smooth chin, then whispered into his ear, Hubby, it seems like we haven't been intimate for a long time. With that, She gently bit his earlobe. She knew that it was his sensitive spot. Sure enough, his body suddenly tensed up and he hugged her tightly. He said in a low voice, "Wife, I've been a little tired these past 2 days." "Oh, so that's how it is. I thought you were tired of me," Xiaodong said half-truthfully. She looked up at him with sparkling eyes and a slight smile. He flicked her forehead in annoyance. "You're talking nonsense. How could I be tired of you?" "That's good." Xiaodong hugged his waist in satisfaction, then jumped down from his embrace. She ran behind him and massaged his shoulders. "Hubby, you've worked hard. Wifey will help you massage your shoulders." Xiaodong took Bailey Han's tiredness to heart. She specially took a day off to boil a pot of chicken soup at home, and cooked a few dishes that he liked. She packed them in a lunchbox and planned to send them to the office to give him a little surprise. During the lunch break, the company's employees had all gone to eat. The office was empty, and even the secretary's desk was empty. Xiaodong directly pushed open the door to the CEO's office. There was no one there. Could it be that Ahan had also gone out for lunch? She placed the lunchbox on the desk and took out her phone. She planned to call him to ask where he was, but before she could make the call, she suddenly heard a strange sound. It seemed to be coming from the lounge. She put away her phone and walked towards the lounge. She held the door handle and gently turned it. When she pushed open the door, her whole body froze. A man and a woman were lying on the bed in the lounge. The man was of course her husband. His suit jacket was carelessly thrown on the floor, and his shirt was unbuttoned. His face was flushed, and his eyes were filled with desire. The woman was Bailey Han's newly hired secretary, Lin Wei. Her clothes were untidy, and she was only wearing a sexy underwear. She was straddling Bailey Han's waist in a riding position. Xiaodong crossed her arms and calmly looked at the messy bed. She said lightly, "It seems that I've disturbed you. Please continue, don't worry about me." A trace of annoyance flashed across Lin Wei's eyes. Just as she was lost in thought, Bailey Han suddenly raised his arm and ruthlessly threw her onto the floor. He stared at her with bloodshot eyes. Scram! Lin Wei awkwardly picked up the clothes on the floor and rushed out of the lounge from Xiaodong's side with the clothes. Xiaodong still crossed her arms and leaned against the door motionlessly. She calmly looked at Bailey Han. Bailey Han breathed heavily, his chest heaving violently. He staggered up from the bed and threw himself at her. "Wife, let me explain." His entire body was leaning against her, the sweat on his forehead dripping down his temples. His body was tense like a rock, and his hoarse voice was filled with desire. "Wifey Shu." Xiaodong supported him with one hand and covered his mouth with the other. "If you're feeling uncomfortable, then don't talk." "That damned woman. How much drug did she give you?" She wasn't a fool. It only took her 2 seconds to determine that he had been drugged. His face was abnormally red. Bailey Han's anxious heart finally calmed down. His body was boiling hot, his throat was itchy, and a fishy sweet taste surged into his mouth. Just now, he had completely used his willpower to resist the powerful medicinal properties of the aphrodisiac. His body was already reaching its limit, so his qi and blood were especially turbulent. Xiaodong was helpless. She didn't want to be a tool to neutralize the drug, but she couldn't watch her husband suffer. She reached out to unbuckle his belt and said, "You'd better be careful in the future. If there's a next time, you can suffocate to death." If she hadn't come in time, he might have lost his virginity. Thinking of this, she was inexplicably angry. "Sorry." He hugged her tightly and eagerly kissed her lips. "Oh. Wait a minute." Just as he was about to carry her onto the bed, she grabbed his arm tightly and stopped him from doing so. She quickly flipped the quilt and sheets on the bed to the ground. She didn't want to smell another woman's scent. Their bodies were tightly pressed together as they lay on the soft mattress. Their hot breaths intertwined. Their seductive moans intertwined into a sweet melody. The room was filled with a romantic atmosphere. The ambiguous atmosphere lingered in the air and didn't dissipate for a long time. After an unknown amount of time, he was still tirelessly tasting her. She curled up under him and softly whimpered, "Don't. Hubby. Stop. Baby, it'll be done soon." A certain someone was sweating profusely. You lie to me every time." Every time he said it would be done soon, but in reality, He still wanted to torture her for at least half an hour. I'm not lying to you this time. He moved fiercely and stopped. Then, he hugged her tightly in his arms and kissed her sweaty cheek. After a short rest, he reached out to pick up his coat and draped it over her. He lovingly stroked her hair and whispered, "Honey, thank you for believing in me." Xiaodong was so tired that she couldn't even open her eyes. She muttered unhappily, "If I hadn't rushed over, you would have been eaten." He tucked her wet hair behind her ear. "No, even if you hadn't come, I would have chased her out. Even if I were to suffocate to death, I wouldn't betray you." She struggled to open her eyes. "Really? Of course it's true. I'm yours alone. No one else can touch me." He leaned over and kissed her forehead, hugging her tightly in his arms. Xiaodong's lips curled into a smile. Satisfied, she fell asleep. When she woke up, the room was dark. Xiaodong frowned and slowly woke up. As her vision gradually regained focus, she realized that she was lying on the bed in the lounge. Her body was dry. Bailey Han must have helped her wash up. He even helped her change into clean clothes. When she got out of bed, her legs were sore and her waist was sore. She rubbed her back and walked out of the lounge in her slippers. At this moment, Bailey Han was sitting behind his desk. His back was straight and the soft light enveloped his body, outlining his perfect figure. His handsome side profile looked extremely charming. His thin lips were slightly pursed and his slender fingers moved quickly on the keyboard, making clicking sounds. She leaned against the door and looked at him, the corners of her lips curling up. "Come and see." Hongchai 866. Chapter 363. He suddenly turned his head to look at her. His sexy lips curved upwards and his dark eyes were full of smiles. He looked at her affectionately. "You're awake." Xiaodong smiled and walked to his side. He stretched out his long arm and pulled her into his embrace. He let her sit on his lap and said gently, "Are you hungry? Do you want to eat something first?" "I'm not hungry." She hugged his waist with both hands. "What time is it now?" "It's almost 7. I actually slept for so long. Why didn't you wake me up?" He ruffled her hair and chuckled softly. "Little lazy kitten, you were sleeping so soundly. How could I bear to wake you up? You waited for me for so long. Are you hungry?" She snuggled in his arms. "I'm not hungry yet. I've finished all the lunch boxes you brought me." He pinched her nose and smiled mischievously. "Besides, I ate a delicious meal like you. I won't be hungry so easily." Xiaodong snorted. "Tell me honestly, how did she drug you?" Bailey Han smiled bitterly. "Coffee." She looked up and pinched his cheek. "Chase her away. I don't want to keep a woman who covets my husband in the company. I've already asked her to leave when you were asleep." Xiaodong mumbled. "I remember that Lin Wei just graduated from university not long ago. Why can't girls think things through these days? What's so good about a married old man like you?" "Old man?" Bailey Han's mouth twitched. He had to remind her. "Honey, I'm only 33 years old. I'm in my prime, suave and handsome." "Stop," Xiaodong interrupted him and laughed mischievously. "But you were so tired a few days ago that you didn't want to touch me anymore, right?" Bailey Han's eyes flashed with embarrassment. He coughed and said, "A week ago, I had a sterilization operation. According to the doctor's advice, we can't have sex for a week." Xiaodong's eyes widened and her mouth was wide open. Suddenly, she burst into laughter. Bailey Han's cheeks were slightly hot. He rubbed her hair. "Stop laughing." Xiaodong rubbed her stomach that was hurting from laughing. "No, I'm not laughing at your operation. I just suddenly thought of something. What if Lin Wei drugged you 2 days ago?" Bailey Han looked a little helpless. "If that's the case, you can only use cold water or go to the hospital." Xiaodong gradually stopped laughing. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed his lips seriously. "Hubby, I'm very glad that she didn't drug you in advance. Otherwise, you would definitely have a hard time." A smile appeared in Bailey Han's charming eyes. His heart was as soft as a feather. He gazed into her eyes and his sexy thin lips curved slightly. He said word by word, I'm also very fortunate to have you in this life. The two looked at each other and smiled. On Xiaodong's birthday, the whole family celebrated her grandly. The next day, Bailey Han took her to his private jet, saying that they were going to make up for their honeymoon. When they first got married, they encountered the kidnapping scene directed and acted by Su Yunqian. Later, they went to Rome to wait for delivery. They never had the chance to make up for their honeymoon. The two of them had originally discussed taking Hai with them. However, when the plane was about to take off, the careless parents realized that little Hai, who was sitting in the baby stroller, was missing. Xiaodong anxiously wanted to get off the plane to look for her, but Bailey Han carried her back. Honey, don't worry. Xiao Yi and the other two took Hai away. Xiaodong panicked. You knew? Why didn't you stop them? Honey, this is a gift from Xiao Yi and the others. They said that they would help us take care of Hai. They are already big kids, so it won't be a problem. Although you say that, I still don't feel at ease. There are housekeepers and servants in the villa. They will help take care of Hai. Don't worry. Enjoy our time together. The plane carried the secretly delighted Bailey Han and the uneasy Xiaodong to their holiday destination, Europe. They would have a month to enjoy the local customs and customs of Europe. They would also go to Italy to visit the elderly Tomac. On the other side, Xiao Yi, Xiao Bao, and Xiao Guai were playing with their little sister, Hai. 3 8-year-old children taking care of the 2.5-year-old Xiao Bao's baby. No matter how one thought about it, they were a little worried. Therefore, when the old madam found out that Hai didn't go on a holiday with Bailey Han and his wife, she asked the housekeeper to bring the 4 children to the old mansion. However, the children refused and said that their summer homework was to learn how to take care of their little sister. Therefore, they wanted to take care of Hai on their own. The old madam's worry was like a flood flowing out of control. Therefore, she ordered the housekeeper and servants in the villa to protect the young master and Mississippi. If there was an accident, they were to bring their heads to see me. On the lawn of the villa. Hai, look, Dowda likes you a lot. She keeps licking your face with her tongue. Xiao Bao rubbed Dowda's big furry head and laughed foolishly at Hai, who had a bitter expression on her face. Hai's delicate little face scrunched up. She pushed Dowda's big head with her little hand. Dowda licked her face with her saliva. It was so uncomfortable. Hai, you don't like Dowda licking your face? Then Big Brother will help you chase Dowda away. Xiao Bao patted Dowda's head. Dowda, stop licking. Hurry up and retract your big tongue. You're scaring Hai. Oh. It hurt her self-esteem. Dowda shook her big furry head and retracted her tongue dejectedly. She lay on the lawn listlessly with her 2 paws under her chin. She stared pitifully at Hai with her big watery eyes and whined. Little mistress, don't despise me. I know how to act cute. Hai blinked her sparkling eyes and carefully approached Dowda. She stretched out her chubby little hand and gently stroked its fur. Awoo, awoo. The second sound came from little Hai. Xiao Bao hugged her excitedly. Hai, this is Dowda. She's called Dowda. Hai blinked her big eyes and looked at him. She didn't understand why her brother was so excited. She thought for a moment and opened her mouth to bark. Woof woof. She's not called Woof woof. She's called Dowda. Come and say it with Big Brother. Dowda, woof woof. Hai was stubborn. Dogs should bark woof woof woof. That was how the dogs on TV were supposed to bark. Just as the siblings were shouting Dowda Dowda and woof 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 woof, Xiao Yi and Xiao Guai walked out of the villa. Xiao Yi was holding a fruit platter in her arms and Xiao Guai was holding Hai's plush toy. They waved at the 2 people and 1 dog gathered together from afar. Big Brother, Hai, come and eat some fruit. Xiao Bao shouted excitedly. Come over quickly. Hai spoke. Hai really spoke. That's great. Xiao Yi and Xiao Guai ran over excitedly. Xiao Yi stuffed the fruit platter into Xiao Bao's arms. She held Hai's little shoulder and said excitedly, Hai, call Big Brother E. I'm your Big Brother E. Xiao Guai didn't want to be outdone and squeezed in front of Hai. No. You should call me Big Sister first. Hai, call me Big Sister. Xiao Bao squatted in front of Hai and blinked his big beautiful eyes to get her attention. I was the one who noticed Hai speaking first. You should call me Big Brother Hi Hi first. Call me Big Brother Bao. Hi Hi's black eyes darted from one to the other before she started giggling. Her innocent and cheerful smile infected the three siblings, and they started laughing as well. The children's childish laughter echoed in the sky and dyed the clouds in the horizon red. Sit in a row and eat some fruit. Xiao Guai sat down on the lawn and patted the spot next to her with a sweet smile on her face. Hi Hi, come sit next to Big Sister. Hi Hi let go of Lil P's ear and ran over to Xiao Guai's side, swinging her little butt. She copied her and sat on the lawn with her legs stretched out, swinging her little feet. She was extremely cute. Come Hi Hi. Big Brother Bao will feed you some fruit. Xiao Bao used a toothpick to stick a piece of watermelon and fed it to Hi Hi. Be good. Open your mouth. Okay. Hi Hi nodded Gigai and opened her little mouth to bite the watermelon. She chewed slowly, her pink cheeks puffed up like white and tender Xiaolong Bao. Little mischievous, you're covered in dog fur. Xiao Yi patted the dog fur on her clothes gently for fear of hurting her. After eating the fruit, Xiao Guai used a tissue to wipe Hi Hi's little face and hands. She stroked her soft hair. Hi Hi, are you tired? Do you want to go back to the room and sleep? Cece shook her little head like a rattle drum, puffed up her face and muttered, No. Hi Hi spoke again. It was as if the three siblings had been injected with chicken blood. They all gathered in front of her and stared at her like searchlights. They coaxed her like wolves. Hi Hi, say a few more words. Big sister, big brother, will give you delicious, fun things to eat. Hi Hi tilted her little head and looked at them for a while. Suddenly, she turned around and pointed at Lil P behind her. Woof woof, the three siblings. Okay, woof woof it is. It's better than not talking. Lil P. Teary eyes. Actually, my name is Lil P. Hi Hi turned around and pointed at Xiao Yi with her chubby little finger. She spat out two words clearly. Hey, Xiao Yi was shocked. Her little finger turned to Xiao Bao. Baby. Xiao Bao was also petrified. Finally, her little finger turned to Xiao Guai. Gigai. Wah, although I don't have the word big sister, I'm still so happy. Xiao Guai rushed to hug Hi Hi and kissed her little face. Hi Hi is the best. I want it too. Xiao Bao pounced over and bit Hi Hi's cheek. Xiao Yi didn't want to be left behind. She also went up and bit her on the other cheek. Hi Hi wiped her cheek innocently and pointed at Lil P. Woof woof kiss kiss. Xiao Bao immediately reacted. Lil P had licked Hi Hi's face just now. Sob sob. They had all indirectly kissed Lil P. She quickly ran to the side and spat her saliva with a look of disgust. Xiao Yi and Xiao Guai, who had missed the truth, didn't feel any pressure. They didn't know what Xiao Bao was doing and giggled as they played with Hi Hi. The sky was blue and the clouds were white. The sea breeze was warm. Dusk had arrived and the curtains were drawn. The sky was very dark in the room. Xia Dong rubbed her eyes and got up from the bed. The spot beside her was empty. She knew that he wouldn't have gone far, but her heart still felt empty. She walked to the window barefoot and was about to open the curtains when a pair of arms suddenly hugged her tightly from behind. The chest that was pressed against her back was broad and warm, giving her a very reassuring feeling. She turned around and threw herself into his arms. Breathing in his unique scent, she murmured, "Hubby, where did you go?" I answered the phone. It's Xiao Yi and the rest. Bailey Han rubbed her hair and chuckled. Honey, let me tell you a piece of good news. Hai Hai spoke. Really? Xia Dong quickly raised her head and looked at Bailey Han in disbelief. She said excitedly, Hubby, let's go home. Let's go home now. I want to hear Hai Hai call me mommy. Bailey Han chuckled. I also want to hear Hai Hai call me daddy. But honey, our two-person world has just begun. Don't ruin it, okay? We can listen to Hai Hai speak through the video. Okay. Xia Dong nodded vigorously. Through the video, Xia Dong saw the four children sitting obediently in a group. Hai Hai sat in the middle, holding a duckling toy in her arms. She bared her beautiful white teeth and made funny faces at Xia Dong and Bailey Han in the video. Xia Dong clapped her hands and said softly, Hai Hai, call me mommy. I'm your mommy. Hai Hai smiled cutely and said in a childish voice, Kitty. Xia Dong was stunned at first, then she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Ha! The children burst into laughter. It's not Kitty, it's Mommy. Hi, say it again, Mommy. Xiaodong deliberately dragged her voice so that she could hear it more clearly. Hi covered her face shyly and said in a childish voice again, Kitty. Xiaodong covered her face and burst into tears. Bailey Han rubbed her hair and whispered, Don't worry. Don't discourage Hi. Xiaodong immediately perked up. Hi, this is your daddy. Call him Daddy. Hi smiled sweetly. Daddy. A sense of pride rose from the bottom of his heart. Bailey Han beamed. Hi is so obedient. Say it again. Daddy. Say it again. Daddy. The little girl had just learned how to speak and was very excited. She pointed at everyone and said woof. Baby. Gigai. Kitty. Daddy. Woof. Even Lil P was in line. Lil P was very pleased. On both sides of the video there was endless laughter. Distance would not cut off the bond between them. They were a family, a happy family. After reluctantly ending the call, Xiaodong leaned lazily in Bailey Han's arms and muttered, When the children grow up, we'll be old too. Bailey Han hugged her tightly and chuckled softly. Will you dislike me when I'm old? She looked up at him excitedly. Of course not. He kissed her forehead gently. I won't either. Even if your hair turns white and all your teeth fall out, I'll still hold your hand and watch the sunrise and sunset with you. So you see, old age isn't scary because I'll be with you until you grow old. Her eyes were full of smiles. She held his hand tightly and interlocked their fingers. I'll hold your hand and grow old with you. He suddenly turned over and pressed her under his body. His deep eyes were full of smiles and the corners of his lips curled up seductively. Wifey, while we're still young, let's do more things that we love to do. His smile made her blush and her heart beat faster, but she was willing to indulge in it for the rest of her life. Ad. Xingwu 799. Chapter 364. Brother Kansun, I saw a Yuan. He's alive, he's still alive, but his condition isn't very good. So he was imprisoned by Su Morong. On the plane, what Xiaodong said lingered in Mika Kito's mind. He clenched his fists tightly, and his body trembled uncontrollably. His nose was sour, and his chest was tight as if it was about to explode. How long has it been since he was in such pain? Scenes flashed through Mika Kito's mind. When he was still a little boy, no matter where he went, he would always hold the hand of his younger brother, who was 3 years younger than him. He loved it when his younger brother looked at him with admiration and called him brother. So he always worked hard to make himself stronger. He helped his younger brother chase away the bad kids who bullied him, helped his younger brother with his handicraft homework, and taught this clingy little tail of his to learn martial arts. Unknowingly, something cold slipped from the corner of his eyes. Suzaku, who was sitting next to Mikakito, pretended not to see anything. She quietly turned her head and looked out the window. The beautiful sunset dyed the sky red, and the golden sunlight shone through the window and onto the floor. Mikakito stood at the door of the ward like a statue, staring deeply at the boy in white who was sitting on the floor with his back to him. He was very, very thin, and the white hospital gown seemed to be hanging on his body. His head was lowered, and all his attention was on the skull in his arms. His slender fingers gently stroked the skull, and his movements were so gentle that it was as if he was stroking the hair of his lover. Beitangshan squatted in front of him, and looked at his familiar yet unfamiliar face. The two brothers' eyebrows were somewhat similar, but Beitang Yuan's face was a little smaller, his chin was a little sharper, and his facial features looked a little more beautiful. His current appearance overlapped with his face when he was young and heavily intruded into Beitangshan's mind. He could no longer control his emotions and suddenly hugged his younger brother tightly. His lips couldn't stop trembling and his chest violently rose and fell. Ayuan, I'm your older brother. Ayuan, I finally found you. Hiroshi Kitato was like a puppet, letting him hug him without saying a word. The tears in Mika Kito's eyes finally rolled down. Outside the ward, Suzaku pressed her back against the wall and slowly closed her eyes. Something sparkling and translucent fell from the corner of her eyes. After a long time, Mika Kito came out of the ward. She was expressionless and exuded a cold aura. Suzaku moved away from the wall. She looked at him and said calmly, I've talked to the doctor. He can bring Ayuan home today. Mikakito's deep eyes fell on her. You've never interfered in my personal affairs. There was no accusation or displeasure in his tone, only curiosity. Suzaku pursed her lips. I've already settled the discharge procedures. Mikakito's eyes flickered, but she didn't say anything else. He brought Hiroshi Kitato back to his villa. The room arranged for Hiroshi Kitato faced the garden. All kinds of flowers were in full bloom, and there was a small lake behind the garden. A group of wild ducks swam in the lake. Every morning, they quacked happily, and the chirping of the birds in the trees combined to form a joyful morning song. Beitangyuan moved into a new environment. He was very calm, or rather, very indifferent. He was like a robot, silently accepting the arrangements given to him by the outside world. He didn't reveal the slightest bit of dislike or affection. He hugged his skull and stood in front of the huge floor-to-ceiling window, quietly looking into the distance. He didn't respond to Mikakito's instructions at all. Suzaku stopped Mikakito in the corridor. She pursed her lips and said, I want to take care of Ayuan. Mikakito stared into her eyes. His deep gaze was as if he wanted to see through her organs. He said solemnly, You treat Ayuan differently. I want to know the reason. Suzaku's calm gaze cracked. She pursed her lips and said calmly, I won't hurt Ayuan. I just want him to get better soon. You don't want to tell me the reason. Mikakito paused and continued. Or you can't tell me the reason. She clenched her fists and said slowly, I can't tell you the reason. He looked at her deeply. After a while he said, Okay, you'll take care of him. He believed in her. He believed that she wouldn't do anything to hurt Ayuan. She said slowly, Thank you. At first, Mikakito was a little worried. He was worried that Suzaku was a killer and didn't know how to take care of others like other women. However, he soon realized that he was wrong. Suzaku was always cold in front of others, including Mikakito. She rarely smiled. However, in front of Ayuan, she showed a side of her that no one knew. She was meticulous, patient, and gentle. She smiled and told stories to Ayuan. She gently helped him dry his wet hair. She held his hand and walked around the villa. She pulled him to hide behind a rock to observe the ducks. She matched clothes for him and made him look handsome and charming. Then she took him to the amusement park, the zoo, and the aquarium. Mikakito tried his best to find time to participate in their activities. He watched as Ayuan gradually gained awareness of his surroundings under Suzaku's care. He watched as he became more and more dependent on Suzaku, just like a newborn animal instinctively relying on its mother. At night, on the rooftop, the night breeze was blowing and the sky was dotted with stars. A tall figure stood by the railing with a can of beer in his hand. He raised his head and took a big gulp. The crisp sound of high heels came from behind him. A faint, familiar fragrance was carried to his nose by the night breeze. He didn't need to look to know who it was. You always like to drink alone. Suzaku walked to his side and leaned against the railing. She also had a can of beer in her hand. Mikakito looked at the night sky in the distance and said indifferently, Is Ayuan asleep? Yes. Ayuan is very obedient today. He's willing to talk to me. Suzaku was in a good mood at the mention of Hiroshi Kitato. Her tone was light. Just now, I poured him a glass of warm milk. He didn't want to drink it, so he shook his head and refused. This is the first time that he's willing to show his emotions. Mikakito's lips curled up. He turned to look at her. Under the starlight, her face was full of joy. There was a smile in her delicate eyes, and she was as happy as a child. He touched her with the can of beer and said in a deep voice, This is all thanks to you. Thank you. She grinned, revealing her beautiful teeth. She said heroically, Cheers. The two of them didn't hesitate and finished the can of beer in one gulp. Suzaku waved the can of beer in her hand and frowned in frustration. There's no more. I should have brought a few more cans. Mikakito's eyes were filled with joy. He lifted his chin in a certain direction. I still have a stash. It's over there. Wait here. I'll go get it. Her eyes curved. She really ran in the direction he pointed and brought over a can of beer. Beitangshin took the beer she handed over and jumped onto the platform that was more than 2 meters high. He sat on the edge of the platform and opened the can of beer with a click. Suzaku's lips curled up slightly. She jumped up and sat beside him. She looked at the bright night view of the city and said indifferently, "This is the second time we're sitting here drinking." Mikakito grunted and looked straight ahead. "Do you want to bet again?" Suzaku teased. "Aren't you afraid that I'll assassinate you while you're drunk?" He said indifferently, "No." The two of them had been through many life and death situations together. He had long regarded her as one of his own. Suzaku's eyes were filled with a faint smile. She waved the can of beer in her hand. "What shall we bet on this time?" Mikakito stared at her with a deep gaze. He said slowly, "We'll bet on a question. The winner can ask the loser a question." Suzaku ran her fingers through her hair and chuckled. "I know what question you want to ask me, but I won't lose." "Then prove it to me." "Okay." Just like the previous time, they clinked their beer cans together, indicating that the bet was established. However, the difference was that their eyes were no longer cold. Instead, there was a faint smile in them. Empty wine cans were thrown onto the floor one after another, making clanking sounds. They were like machines that did not know fatigue, repeating the action of drinking. Occasionally they would stop and look into the distance. No one spoke. The night was eerily silent. After drinking a lot, Suzaku's eyes started to blur. Her cheeks were faintly pink. She muttered softly, "My stomach is so bloated." As she spoke, she patted her bulging belly. Mikakito's eyes were still cold. He had never seen such a coquettish expression on her face. He chuckled. "It's no wonder your stomach isn't bloated after drinking so much." He snatched the beer can from her hand. "Stop drinking. You're already drunk." She frowned and pouted her red lips. "Who said I'm drunk? I'm very sober. Let's continue drinking. I won't lose to you. You're already drunk." "I'm not." Mikakito stretched out 2 fingers. "How many fingers are these?" She stared at his fingers and thought for a long time. "TSK. You're an idiot. These are fingers." Mikakito's lips twitched. "You're really drunk. You've lost. You have to admit defeat. Answer me a question." A certain someone completely ignored him. His body leaned back and lay down on the high platform. Mikakito leaned over and pushed her shoulder. "Don't sleep. Go away." She waved her hand impatiently, shooing him away as though he were a fly. "Tell me, do you and Ayuan know each other from before?" Mikakito leaned even closer to her. He was so close that he could see the blush on her cheeks under the starlight. "Ayuan. Ayuan." She muttered softly. "Yes, Ayuan. Do you know each other from before?" He waited intently for her answer. Unexpectedly, she turned over and curled up her limbs, curling herself into a ball. Soon the sound of steady breathing could be heard. She had fallen asleep. Mikakito didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the woman curled up in a ball. He stretched out his hand to wake her up, but in the end, he changed his direction and put his arm around her waist. He carried her and jumped off the platform. Welfare Shinwu 799. Chapter 365. A ray of sunlight shone into the room through the window. Suzaku rubbed her aching head and got up from the bed. She remembered that she had a drinking contest with Mikakito last night, and she seemed to have lost. He actually allowed her to get drunk in front of him. She really trusted him. She frowned and was a little unhappy with herself. She glanced sideways at the bedside alarm clock and exclaimed in annoyance, "Oh no, I missed breakfast with Ayuan." She actually slept until 9 o'clock. It was unbelievable for someone like her who was used to waking up early. Suzaku quickly jumped out of bed and rushed to the bathroom to wash up. Halfway through brushing her teeth, she suddenly remembered something. How did she get back to her room last night? Could it be that Mikakito had sent her back? Suzaku got dressed and went downstairs. The maid who was cleaning the living room greeted her with a smile. "Miss Suzaku, good morning." Suzaku nodded and asked indifferently, "Where's second young master?" "Eldest young master is playing chess with second young master in the backyard. It was the weekend, so Mikakito didn't need to go to the office. Suzaku casually ate 2 mouthfuls of breakfast and drank a glass of milk. She then brought 2 glasses of fresh orange juice to the backyard. From afar, she saw Mikakito and his brother sitting on a hanging chair under the shade of a tree. There was a 5-in-a-row chessboard on a wooden table shaped like a tree stump. Mikakito was wearing a white shirt and black trousers. His simple outfit couldn't hide his handsome figure and natural arrogance. He had a gentle smile on his face. His slender fingers were pointing at a certain position on the chessboard as he smiled and said something. Hiroshi Kitato was wearing a white t-shirt and light-colored casual pants. His handsome face had a troubled expression. His pink lips were pouting and his beautiful eyes were wet. He looked like he was about to cry. Suzaku quickened her pace and walked over to them. She placed 2 glasses of orange juice in each of their hands and smiled. Ayuen, what's wrong? When Hiroshi Kitato saw his savior, he grabbed her hand tightly and shook it like a spoiled child. Suzaku smiled and stroked his soft hair comfortingly. Then, she glanced at the chessboard and immediately understood what was going on. She looked at Mikakito reproachfully. Why didn't you let Ayuen win? He already had 3 black stones in 2 places. No matter which side Ayuen blocked, he was going to win. No wonder Ayuen had such a pitiful expression. Suzaku's facial features were very charming. Usually, she looked cold and aloof, so no one dared to offend her. However, at this moment, she was smiling gently. There was a hint of seductiveness in her reproach. Mikakito was slightly stunned. Then he smiled. Ayuen, let's play again. Big brother will let you win, okay? Hiroshi Kitato shook his head vigorously. His fair cheeks were puffed up. Ayuen is angry. It's all your fault. Suzaku glared at Mikakito and held Ayuen's hand. Ayuen, let's go to the lake to see Greyley and Goldie, okay? Hiroshi Kitato nodded heavily. He held Suzaku's hand with one hand and his precious skull with the other. He smiled brightly. Let's go to the lake. Looking at his pure smile, Suzaku's heart was filled with warmth. Suzaku and Hiroshi Kitato walked in front. Hiroshi Kitato lowered his head and kicked the pebbles on the road from time to time. Every time a pebble hit his target, he would happily jump twice. Then, he would turn to look at Suzaku and stare at her eagerly, like a child waiting for his parents to praise him. Every time this happened, Suzaku would stroke his hair and praise him with a smile. Ayuen is amazing. The 2 of them were getting closer to the lake. Suzaku suddenly felt that something was wrong. She turned around and looked at Mikakito, who had been following them all the way. She raised her eyebrows. Why are you here? Mikakito said sternly. I'm going to see Greyley and Goldie too. Suzaku smiled. She suddenly felt that the awkward look on this man's face was a little cute. Hiroshi Kitato was not the type to hold a grudge. He quickly forgot about the unpleasant incident during the game of chess. He let go of Suzaku's hand and ran to Mikakito's side. He grinned and pointed at the wild ducks playing in the lake. He seemed to be inviting his older brother to see Greyley and Goldie with him. Mikakito stroked his hair and smiled. Okay, I'll go see them with Ayuen. Hiroshi Kitato skipped in front while Mikakito and Suzaku walked side by side behind him. Suzaku coughed and said, Thank you for sending me back to my room last night. Mikakito turned to look at her. You're welcome. But don't forget that you still owe me a question. Suzaku looked at Hiroshi Kitato's back and said calmly, I know what you want to ask. I don't want to hide it from you anymore. After a few seconds of silence, she said slowly, I grew up in an orphanage. When I was 5 years old, a new boy came to the orphanage. His name was Liang Yuan. It was said that his mother had passed away and he had no other relatives. When he was wandering on the streets, Director Lin found him and brought him back to the orphanage. When Ayuen first came to the orphanage, he didn't say a word. He was very quiet and never cried or made a fuss. I don't know what happened to him to make a 6-year-old child so quiet. At that time, I was very cheerful and always made him talk and laugh. Perhaps I treated him as a good listener, so I even told him my secret. Mikakito could not help but ask, What secret? Suzaku chuckled. When I was young, I was afraid of thunder. One thunderstorm, I hid in the closet and everyone looked for me. In the end, Ayuen found me. I was afraid that he would laugh at me, so I told him that I wasn't afraid of thunder. I was just playing hide-and-seek here. I didn't expect him to smile. That was the first time he smiled at someone. He said, "I know you're a brave girl." She seemed to be immersed in the memories of the past, and there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. After that, we became very good friends. When I was 8 years old, I was adopted by an old man. Actually, it was an assassin organization. Just like that, I was groomed to be an assassin. When I grew up and returned to the orphanage to look for a UN, Director Lin told me that a UN went missing after school. I think he must have been imprisoned by Su Morong at that time. At the mention of Su Morong, Mikakito's pupils shrank and he exuded a cold and murderous aura. Suzaku glanced at him and said indifferently, "I'm actually very curious. Why did a UN appear in China?" Mikakito clenched his fists tightly. After a long time, he slowly released them and said in a low voice, "When a UN was 5 years old, my mother found out that my father had a mistress outside. She was very angry and took a UN back to China. Later, my mother died in a car accident. As she could not contact her relatives, the police buried her in the cemetery and sent a UN to a welfare home. I heard from the person in charge of the welfare home that a UN ran away after less than a month." At this point, Mikakito's tone suddenly changed and became cold. His gaze was terrifying. At first, I didn't understand why a UN ran away. Later, after investigating for a long time, I found out that a UN was bullied at the welfare home. Later, my father and I searched for a UN for many years, but we couldn't find him. I even thought that he had passed away. Mikakito looked up at Hiroshi Katato, who was playing by the lake, and said in a low voice, "A UN used to be very naive and cheerful. The reason why he became silent after he came to the orphanage was because he lost his mother and was bullied by other children. Later, a UN was imprisoned by Su Morong and his beloved girl was killed. Why did his poor brother's life have to be filled with hardships?" Suzaku read the sadness and hatred in Mikakito's deep eyes. Her heart ached for a UN, but at the same time, there was a complicated feeling in her heart. She couldn't bear to see Mikakito sad. She couldn't help but reach out and pat his shoulder. She said softly, "It's all in the past. A UN will get better." Mikakito looked down at the hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry." She quickly retracted her hand and coughed. "I'll go accompany a UN first." Mikakito stood where he was and looked at the scene of a UN and Suzaku sitting side by the lake. The hostility in his body gradually disappeared, and there was a trace of warmth in his cold eyes. On the day of Su Morong's execution, Mikakito went to the rooftop to drink again, but he didn't expect someone to arrive before him. Suzaku had already finished a can of beer. He walked to her side and said calmly, "Don't drink too much. I don't want to carry you back to the room." Suzaku smiled. "I'm very grateful that you didn't leave me here for the night last time." He looked at her expressionlessly. "Do I look like that kind of man?" She shrugged. "They do look alike." Other than Xiaodong, who was full of tenderness, he was cold to all the other women. He took a sip of beer. "Then you're wrong." Suzaku chuckled and didn't dwell on this issue. After finishing the can of beer, Mikakito said calmly, "I'm going to take a UN back to Japan. If you want to stay in City A, I won't stop you." She said without hesitation, "I'm going to Japan too. When are we leaving?" "In a week's time." They spent a lot of effort to persuade a UN to put down the skull in her hand and replace it with a white plush toy before boarding the plane. When they were saying goodbye to Xiaodong's family at the airport, a UN spoke for the first time and called out Xiao Guai's name. Mikakito and Suzaku were very happy. They believed that a UN would recover soon. Qingshan Spirit Garden was located in the center of Tokyo. It was one of the largest cemeteries in Tokyo. Mikakito's parents were buried here. Looking from above, the Spirit Garden looked like Tokyo's Green Island. After walking through a cherry blossom path that was nearly 2 kilometers long, they saw tombstones under the shade of green trees. Surrounded by cherry blossom trees, 2 tombstones stood side by side on the lawn. Mikakito placed 2 bouquets of flowers in front of the tombstones. She pulled Hiroshi Kitato to her side and said, Ayuan, this is our father and mother. Add Shinwu 799 that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.